bit of morning light coming onto here, and we're going to do a beach scene again. Now I'm living near the coast. I think it would be applicable to do some more children running on our beach this last summer. Only got a few shots, and it's going to be very difficult these days. Going to be very careful these days taking such shots because people think you're up to strange things. So I always carry my artist cards with me just in case. And it's not always possible to ask permission, so it's very difficult. So in this case, I'm going to block out the faces of the young children on the beach. On the photographs, you won't recognise them as an impressionist painter anyway when I actually do the painting, so that won't matter. And this is the point, that I'm not recreating actual photographs of children that could be used in any nefarious way. What I'm actually doing is creating a scene naturally that we love, of people enjoying the beach, the air, the light, the colours, the sounds, the smells, and what we enjoy cleanly and directly most about such a scene. So let's get on with doing that, and where I'm going to start is with the sky, and again a very broken colour sky. The joy of the colours, the joy of the painting. An impressionist scene, broken colour meaning putting one colour against another. In other words, if I want orange, I'll put yellow next to red in little strokes to make it seem much brighter rather than actually mixing the colours straight away. So as you've seen the pictures coming through now, the sort of paintings, the scenes I'm going to use is actually a composite painting of two photographs of these figures coming in on one and these figures coming in on the other. And an important thing is, and the fun's going to be having the reflections later, so we're going to work sky, then down through sea, then all the reflections of the sky and the water, and then gradually build up the sand, and finally paint the figures. Now the figures are going to be painted very simply, and this is what I wanted to show you most of all, was this simple way of painting figures in this same method. The whole painting must be painted in the same way. We're not going to particularly pick out one particular thing. And the figures will also be painted impressionistically. In other words, we should be painting medium tones, then the darks, and then the highlights of the light catching across them to bring them out and give them light and form. Then here's my palette and brushes. I've just got my medium, small and larger filberts, nylons, and one small round, and then my normal palette of paints. Plenty of colour here. I'm going to be leaving with some nice bright colours this time. A lot of white on because I'm going to be tinting. I'm going to be using not a body colour, the white, and mixing those colours in to get this shiny vibrance of a fairly high key. So here we are, there are two photographs, and you can see how I've combined the two together. I think I prefer the sky in the lower one to the upper one, so there's not much in it. There's this lovely turquoise going on, and rather than just painting a block of colour across and having it flat, I'm going to work a lot more vibrance into this and change it. I'm the artist, I can change things as I want. So I shall work up from this turquoise through. That's going to be white, and as we did in one of the recent paintings of the wildfowl, it's going to be white with a little touch of lemon yellow and a little touch of green, the emerald green. Surprising what colours we're going to need. Then a touch of the cerulean blue. Let's put some more colour out soon, it's getting a little bit muddy. Let's see what we've got with that. So fairly light, so it's quite a green. Bring that all the way across this horizon line first of all. And again, we've got a white canvas, so it's going to look very dark at first, but it isn't going to be in the end. Because we do need to have these darker colours on, or darker than the whites and so on that are going to be within the beach. Right the way across here, all the way across the horizon line. First of all, before I even start my broken colour, get a nice level horizon. Put off there, but that won't matter. Really play with these colours a bit and put more green in, more blue in. Really want to go for this bluey green at first. Might seem a bit strange, but it will all hopefully work as I go on. Because the green is going to play against the reds and the pinks in the sky, which I'm going to be using. There's so many permutations of colours that we could use here. So I'm just painting in bands of colour at the moment. Now I'm going to start feathering this colour into that colour. And this is a lovely technique to use. So that instead of blending, we're actually getting a broken colour technique coming down into here. I'm going to take that darker green and actually bring little strokes of it, as I was doing just now in a way, by dragging down from above into this colour below to get this vibrance that we want. Little strokes then going one into another, bringing them right up and through so that it all blends together, but the eye blends it. Now I'm going to go into more cerulean with the blue. A bit more terps into my mix. You see it's going to a more cerulean blue now. And I'm going to come right back across this in a moment, right back across it with some pinks. So it's not going to stay as it is now by any means at all. A bit more white in that mix, a little bit lighter, as you go darker as I go up. All the way across again. You can see the green still coming into it from the brush. Right the way across like that. Fairly thick with the paint. Not too thin, this paint. I want to cover the white canvas, get into the bite of the canvas, and then once again let's just bring those colours one into another, this vibrance. Little tiny strokes to the tip of the brush, just tickling it in. Now this technique, very useful technique, can be used on plein air. It's a great one to use when you're actually out there because it's so rapid. It just means seeing those colours. Now I'm taking that light blue again and coming back across the original. You see how bright it becomes already. We've got a lovely vibrance as if we've got the sunlight of this East Lincolnshire coast. When you do get light, that is. You get some beautiful lights here when it's not a strong, nasty, easterly and grey day. Then we've got different light altogether. There we go. And we get stronger still with the cerulean. And now you see this starts to become lighter as I put the darker colour on. A little bit more terps again just to get it flowing. Right the way through to here again. I'm going to bring cloud over this later. I know I've said it, but I'll repeat to you so that you know it's not the finished article at all. And again, in we come again with the blending. Little strokes, just joining it up all the way along that edge and bringing some down into here again. So that we don't have a hard, sharp edge. Now we start to go warmer with the blue. I'm going to bring in some cobalt blue. This is my next warmest blue up. A bit of terps again. I still want a touch of green even in that. So I'm putting a little tad of green into it. Just a wee bit more. There's quite a green sky here because I want to play it against the purples later. So we've got a much stronger, warmer green coming up there. A little bit more green to that still. Some more cobalt. We've got quite a strong cobalty green going on. All the way through here. Up to there. There we go again. It's quite dark now. Up to here. And then I'm going to stop and bring a pink down shortly. A little bit more blue just up here. Right through and down into there a bit. Because this is where my purpley colour is going to come in a moment. Right, and again the same here, we blend that down and through. One into another. So we should have a gentle blending of these colours all the way down through the sky. Now, clean my brush, and I've got to make quite a purpley pink. White again. Right next to the colour I've just been making, because I'm going to bring a little bit of it into it, just so it becomes a part. Take some purple. Right, here's the blue I've just been using with the greens. Now I'm mixing a white and a little bit of the purple in. And it wants to be quite dark because I'm going to have much lighter waves down below. A little touch of yellow, a little tiny touch of, don't make it too much, it's almost too much, so more white, bring it back again. More white, a little more touch of the purple again, that's better. Paint out all of this white now. It seems very dark, but that is because of the white canvas, not because our colour is wrong. I've been enhancing these colours on the photograph, on the computer and playing around, merely to give myself more ideas, not to copy, but to give myself more ideas about the effects of light and colour I can play with. And lots of permutations when you're playing with a computer program like that you can have, so many permutations. Right, that's got that colour all the way through there. Because of the white canvas it's nice and clean. Now I need to have broken colour coming up through into here. So I'll take that same colour and start to break it up through here and bring that blue into below as well. So that comes into this one, and the top one comes into the lower one, like that. Just beginning, hopefully, to see these beautiful effects that we can get. Now I want to make a lot more of that paint and make it come down into the sky itself, way down to here as well. Blend that through by putting these little strokes in. Don't want any particular piece showing too much. And it's quite subtle, like a hazy warm day. And there's some of this cloud line coming all the way along here. So I'm going to just put these little fluffy clouds lightly using the edge of the brush, because otherwise they're going to blend too much. All the way along this horizon line here, just flicking them in. It's quite technical stuff. Now that's the beauty of these softer nylon brushes. If they're too soft, like watercolour brushes, I wouldn't be able to put this on at all, they just clog up. If they're too stiff, like a bristle brush, then you would find that it's blending too much. Now this colour comes all the way down through. Actually there's a lot more of it this end, so I'm going to have to really plaster on and cover over a lot more of this end here, right down through into the sea. Don't worry about that, because I'm going to straighten that up later. It's all there for me, and that actually comes up and is blending in with all these colours above here. These little pointillist strokes, these impressionist strokes, to link the whole thing together. And then the difference you see where I'm putting the tip of the brush now and actually leaving the clouds showing more, as to where I've actually been blending them in and doing a pointillist technique in. So here's the tip of the brush now coming out and coming up into the cloud effects, so that we leave those strokes showing. Not too much of a pattern, so be careful they don't remain the same. Now I've got to make a far more turquoise blue again to come back into this, I feel. Cerulean blue again, just the cerulean blue this time, and some white. Now it may be that if I don't get the turquoise enough for my needs, but I'm actually going to put a warmer blue in, but it isn't always the thing that you think is wrong that is wrong. It can be the thing next to it. So in this case you see the turquoise that I'm bringing down here is more blue, is more turquoise than the greeny paint around it. But the effect of that is to make the yellow behind seem more yellow. This is just what I'm trying to do, is to now bring down some of these darker areas between the clouds into here. That's all quite subtle stuff. So that's brought the blue back in again, quite strongly. A bit more blue again coming up into there now. Quite a turquoise blue, the cerulean blue. Now I'm going to take my cobalt again and just try a little of the warmer blue of the cobalt amongst this, to start to make it look a bit more turquoise, a bit more of a turquoise feel to the greens, because this is a warmer blue. I could go right up to ultramarine and go very warm, but I'm not going to do that. I just want to get slightly warmer tints of this cobalt in here. Be careful with the brush strokes. I'm twisting my brush around occasionally, because we don't want the brush strokes to become a pattern. It's easy to get little V-shapes or patterns going on in your paintwork, and they start to look like lumps of grass in the sky or something. So we've got to keep changing the pattern making of the brush. I think we're far off there. Right, I'm going to make the pink a little warmer. I'm going to take a slightly, rather than purple, a slightly warmer colour, some rose, and bring that rose into here as well. Gradually building up as I go along. I have to look and see, so I'm making decisions not always all beforehand. I'll make changes as I go along as well. So here we are, a little bit of stronger rose going into this slightly purpley pink, which again is going to give me a different effect again and make the warmer seem warmer again. So little tiny broken brush strokes now. I'm not blending as much as just putting these little tiny broken brush strokes with the end of the brush into this, deliberately bringing it right through the sky and into and through shapes of the clouds. I just want to push the greens a bit more. I know it seems strange to you that I should be putting so much green to a sky, but it make the pinks seem so much pinker. Here we are. Now I'm going to put a much deeper green into this sky. This is the emerald again, and it's almost, this time, almost pure emerald, so I'm going quite dark. It will make those blues seem so much bluer. So look at those little pieces of green. You've got to keep working on it. It's no good saying, oh, that'll do, well, that's near. If you're not happy, don't leave it, come back in and work into it. Little strokes now again of green, emerald green coming in. And it changes the whole sky by this being so much stronger, giving more vibrance to the turquoises and the other blues around it. And this will make more sense when I get my darker colours in below it. Again, we're still fighting the white paint on the primer. Now we're getting that shimmering effect that I was after, and I think I'm about there with that sky. Right, time now is to come down to the sea here. I'm going to need some quite fine brush work here, but first of all I want to put a mauve across here, quite a very sort of light purple mauve into browns. So it comes through from a browny colour, greeny brown there to the mauve, and then into the lighter blues and turquoises reflecting off here. So let's make myself up first of all a mauvey brown. Take a little bit of burnt sienna, and a little bit of my rose. Let's test that. That gives me quite a nice deeper brown. Maybe a bit too deep in fact. Just go along that top edge with that. First of all, yeah, maybe a bit too deep, but we'll just give it a go. I'll have to just clean my brush up and tidy up those edges. Now, I still need that more purple colour, which I didn't get. A little bit of terps and a bit of the purple. Test that. That's more like it. A bit more white because I need more body colour. Paint straight into there. That's better. Not colours you would expect at first. This is why we're really having to look, make changes. It gets a bit bluer, a bit lighter. I want a bit more blue and green going into there later as well. So again, let's have some more of this purple being mixed up as we come down into here. Right down through, around the figure a bit more. We're even starting to come down into the water already on this figure. Leave these, just go into the, cut into the figures slightly, don't worry about that, just so they're just there to help us find the thing, so we know where we are for the future. So wherever these colours are on our brush, put them in. We're working almost straight down now into our colours here, our blues and our greens in the sky, so we know where our lights and darks are going to be shortly. You can see how quickly we're establishing this painting, and if I was working out of doors how this could work, this technique. I threw in a little bit of cobalt into there then, deliberately, because I wanted to just test the cools against the warms again. The way that the waves are reflecting the sky, coming in from this warmer colour behind. So I'm going to adjust. I think I'd like to get some of the more delicate colours into the background now, so I'm going to go down to only my smaller filberts and just find a little bit of this green which I was using earlier, because that needs to start coming across here. Just feel this green that's going on reflecting the sky in the background across the water here. Quite subtle changes in colour, they're important ones. There we go. And it goes a little bit warmer in the green, so I'm going to take a slightly warmer green, or yellowy sap green, and just come along this edge a bit more here. Alright, I think it's almost time to come back and start painting in some of the browns into it, but we'll just get a bit more of our light blues in. Ceruleans with the white. A lot of work just to fill these spaces in at first, just to get them all working. Of course we're going to be able to come back and put in lights and darks over each other as I go along. It's not going to just stay just like this. Right, so we're about ready to start on the brown colours now. We'll start with the lighter tones. I think we'll start with yellow ochre on that, a little bit of burnt sienna, and it wants cooling down a touch, so we'll take a little bit of purple and blue into it. When I say blue, I'll use the cerulean again. There we go, that's better. A bit more yellow in it later. Let's get started off with that. More yellow ochre, I think. A bit of lemon yellow as well. And a bit more white, just to get this covered up before we get rid of the white, before we really start laying on and finding the other colours. I'm going to have to work this beach backwards and forwards, in other words I'm going to have to bring it out and push it back and bring it out and push it back until I find just the right colours. Gradually blending and feathering edges in, finding lost and found edges. Now lost and found edges where we've got an edge like that where it disappears, and then a found edge like this which is much harsher. So we'll lose it like that and blend it in and make it harsher like that where it's required. Don't mind it blending with the blues at the moment a bit, because I'm going to have to get this textural effect with the water and the wet sand. And now you see this white disappearing, makes a bit more sense. To totally paint out all the canvas, get rid of it, trying to get my values more correctly. This is another reason I like to paint on a coloured ground, is because you don't have to fight against this white all the time. Some of the depths into the water as well, let these sand bits reflect through here and there. Okay, now we move on to the figures, and what we want to do is look just how simply we can paint these figures in an impressionist style. And in fact, for a lot of painting, just to build up very loosely at first and then tighten up at the end. And that's the point, is to start off loosely and finish tight. If we start tight, we can't go loose. So if we start loosely, we can build up and stop when we want. So you can see here how I've just made the figures out of placing on the basic mid-tones first of all. Here the light blue, then working into the darker, finishing off with the highlights at the very end. So I've made the mid-greys here, put in the darks and then the mid-tones here, and then finish with the little highlights at the end. So let's move on now across this little figure, and we'll start painting there and then work our way across. It's here, she's got a dark head, the back of her hair, and then a dark jersey or some such thing on there. It's going round into her front here, put it dark down the front of the legs. We've almost got her now. It doesn't take much, it just takes the right angles, and at the front she's holding a towel, so we'll just take a little bit of cobalt blue, put that in there. We've got the representation of a towel, let it cool down the front, and a wee touch of burnt sienna, and we'll have the dark of her face. Now we need the very light pink again, pink to orange. Need a very light orange at first. Just flick in back of her legs here. And a bit more orange onto that. Yellow just here. And that same very light colour just showing in her neck there. All it takes, it's all we want. Now down to the old fella. Again, back to the dark colour first. Let's take that deep brown, the burnt sienna and a little ultramarine, and we'll try and find his body first here. Let's just work the darks out where they're coming. And actually it is very dark into there, so let's take some burnt sienna again, that deep blue, Prussian blue, and try and get that quite dark just here. So just by painting these shapes we should be able to get it. around the front. Well, I've got these darks on my brush. Let's carry on to the child. Just here. And the back of that child's head. Cut in there a bit more in a minute. It's always going to have to be a little bit of adjustment because I haven't painted exactly up to things. Now let's look at the next girl on. You can almost get the movement just by doing that. We need to cut in places again, so let's come back to our bluey greens. And we'll start to get the areas we have to cut into. Right, across to the other figure. To get these darks established, and I know where I am in the drawing. Right, we know where she is. Now we come back to the granddad again. Right, let's look at his rather nice purple costume. Go with the dark purple first. Now take a bit of that light, add it to some white. Quick as that. While we're on purples, we'll do the feet, because his foot is also going to be in shadow just there, as is this one, and the side of his face here. Now that might seem strange to you to use a purple for a face, but when we're looking at shadow, then we're looking at cooler colours. Down here as well, on that side of the arm, quite a deep, cool purple, and right down here. And the same with the wee lad. Purple down that side. Really look for these colours. I'm talking about tidying up. I think now's the time to come in and do that. Right. Now we want some red. Yeah, for that nice bit of wetsuit he's wearing, or whatever. Down into here. Stripe down the side there. I'm using a bit of rose now rather than cadmium red. I'm going to come on with some orange in just a moment. Right. Now then, the white, the cadmium orange that we had earlier on. Hopefully just down the front of the face here. Don't need to indicate eyes, nose and mouth, just give a feeling of it. Quick bit of impression of where the light is here. I may tidy it up in a moment, but let's just get this right first of all. Now we want his arm. Take some almost pure cadmium orange. Come down that side. Really catch the sunlight here. His arm coming down on the outside there. Even a little bit on the outside just there. Gradually building up. A bit of cream, his beard on here around his face. But hopefully you see how the figures can be made, perhaps more simply than you at first thought. all sorts of bright colours all around here. Okay, let's move on from them for the moment. Okay, we'll go back to these girls. It'll be a little bit, I'm going to put some mauve into that in a minute as well. 1, 2, 3 fingers showing there. Fingers down the back of that leg. Before I put the purples in, let's establish the warmth of that leg. Redraw that in a minute. Got the other one coming through here. These stronger shadows will give us this idea of stronger sunlight. And I'll need to cut back in, so come back to our very light blues shapes, get the legs right. And in fact that light colour is coming quite across the top of the leg here. Our cadmium oranges again, and yellows. And here where that arm's much warmer. And hopefully you see how we can build up these figures just using little strokes of colour in the right places. Barely needs any detail at all. And we start with a little bit of splashes where we see them coming through. They've got a little bit of wet on their feet. And that'll be showing as well on their toes. And there we have the basics of the figures, just flicked in a few strokes, nice and lively, and we'll work on those a fraction later. Next we need to be bringing up these lighter, brighter colours behind, as I was just doing in a way. So I'll take some more of my cream, so lemon yellow and white, and a little touch of the blue. Plenty more white in it because it wants to be really quite light. We'll look at where that all these splashes and things come here. I'm going to be doing a lot more pure whites into here as well. Because we want to get these brightness and movement of these figures. You can see now that these lively strokes will start to work. And we need to reflect these figures as well, as this one will be here. These warms will really make the blues come out and really make the cools sing more. And I want to find these cadmium orange, and it starts to adjust because then it makes the areas that were warm before look cooler because this is even warmer. Splash is cool or warm as well, that matters. Notice the fact that I'm doing not just vertical strokes or horizontal strokes, I'm using both to get the feeling of the lights and darks and reflections amongst this. Really keep working at it until you're happy. Don't give in. Now I've got to start looking at these distant wind turbines, which are a part of this particular scene. Not that they're particularly beautiful, but in this case I do want them in because they are significant. We'll just indicate them again. We're not going to put in loads of exact copies of windmill or wind turbine sails. Or what we're going to do is indicate. Now we need to go in with a slightly darker colour. In this case it's going to be a little bit of, I think, ultramarine and a wee touch of the purple. So a wee touch of ultramarine, a little bit of purple, and away we go. I have a feeling we should use a little bit more green into them too in places that will link a little bit stronger green than the green that's there, because these shapes are ghosting in the distance here. I think it makes quite a difference because it's stronger than the green of the sky. I want it to detract too much from the figures on the beach, which it's doing just slightly. Now I think we still need more warmth in the sand, so I'm going to take my medium filbert again and come back and look at a little bit of cadmium orange going across the surface of some of this sand. Let's just see what happens, shall we? Make it too orange, but wow, yes, it certainly does have quite an interesting effect, doesn't it? Look how now the sunlight's starting to catch the surface of things in the sand, which is what we're after. Dancing sunlight and dancing children. It's so sad that in this time and age we've got so many worries about unnatural things and people who've affected children's lives negatively. But there are so many wonderful people and parents who are not, and it's so worrying that natural instincts and kind deeds and thoughts can be misconstrued, and that people, fathers who are just giving their children a normal hug and a kiss, can be looked at as if it's something unnatural, which it shouldn't be, and it never was. And it's not a Mediterranean light that I'm painting now. I'm deliberately going for the cool sunlight of the English coast of around Mablethorpe, around here, deliberately trying to find that. And I don't think I'm far off now. We've got quite a lot of these colours in and they're working. Well, there we are. I'm going to call that finished. Loose, lively, an impression of the beach, feeling of movement, and I've shown you how I go about doing that in this particular way, and we can finish as tight as we want. Now a new, slightly different project where I'm going to work onto a piece of smooth MDF with a deep brown ground on it, and we're going to look at painting this picture of the cockerels and a hen behind. You can see we've quite a nice selection already to work from. I like drawing a coloured pencil, and we're going to use again a simple set of acrylics and gradually build up our paints by using layers across this dark ground, getting darker and darker and lighter, working out towards the mid-tones and finally finishing up with our lightest colours. So I want to work a sort of vignette around here, darker at the edges, getting lighter into the middle. So I'm going to do straight away is take one of my larger brushes, and it is a standard way to work actually, that we work from our largest to our smallest brushes, and work very dark at the edges here, put just a thin coat of black acrylic. In this case I'm going to use some black across this, all the way across here, and make a sort of vignette, a dark vignette coming into this painting all the way around, letting that brown glow through. It's got quite a lot of black in the birds as well, it should work quite well. So again, as always, I should be working from the looser paint towards the techniques, towards the more tight and detailed at the end of the painting. Just letting that brown glow through this almost glaze effect at the minute, right up to hit the edge here, painting the paint a bit thinner and letting that brown glow through, and as it dries it will lighten up a bit again, and I might even be able to put a second coat on. I'll actually come across with lighter paint over this later. I want to build up this effect of chiaroscuro, of light and dark. And as it's going to sink into the board, the darks will come out again when we put varnish on later. It'll bring these colours right out again. And Prussian blue, let that come over the top, glowing through these tail feathers. We get this light against dark as it comes on. The thing almost disappears. Black tail on the bird here. Bit of dark coming around her wings. Come back on that corner again, give it a second coat of black just to bring it in a bit darker at the corners. Even though it's going to sink in, I know it's going to sink in. Start to just find some of the darker colours in the big cockle in the background, his tail feathers, just to indicate where things are, so that as I go along and build up the colours I'm not going to get lost. And the blue grey of the bird, the hen bird down here. So working up from my darks in the background, and then onto the ground itself, where we can start to indicate a feeling of light also around the background. Light just shining across here a bit, just blending it in for this chiaroscuro, this light and dark, so that it's got a shadow coming across softly. Before we start putting any details, let's work out these colours just subtly. It's a very subtle lighting going on. Same going on here, got a bit of light blue coming into this drinker here, and a bit more blue around the belly of the cockerel here, coming right up the background of this colour. The colour will sink in more, so I'm going to let it sink and blend down into here, gradually picking up these colours and replacing them over and over again with layers of the darker colour as it then soaks into the board. It will become lighter. It's going to sort of dry in strange effects at first, you can see that. It's going to go very light and very pale. Not to worry. So now I'm taking a little bit of cerulean blue and adding it into my base here. Gives a sort of strange negative feel as we paint this, because we're actually almost painting in the negatives, the darks. Anyway, found the edge of that drinker. Come with a bit more care later. I just want to get the basics worked out at the moment, just to catch a bit of light here and there. And the same is going to be happening in the background a bit here. We're going to use the water in a minute and just link this in, as if the sunlight's just coming through and catching around these birds. Wooden run behind there. Just use a bit of water to glaze things back in, soften them back in a bit, link them into here. We did a bit of dry brush work just now. Now I'm going to come back in with a bit of water and a bit of blending. Just soften things back in before they're completely dry. And let that just dry off a bit now. And we can come back and start a more detailed painting of the cockerels. Go on to a bit of ultramarine now, which is a bit darker, but still lighter than our Prussian blue that we're using just now. But it'll just give a bit more brightness and vibrance and colour to this. It'll sink in gradually as well, it won't just stay as sharp and bright as it is now. Just feel the way across these feathers. You want to get this glow of these beautiful cockerel's tail feathers going on. So I've got to gradually build them up across here. We'll add some yellow to start to make it more green. Get these lovely turquoise green feathers coming up the back. Just feeling them. Painting the whole feathers in at the moment, but catching the effects of light as they come across the surface. Lovely colours we can get, letting these lighter ones glow against the dark of the background, which is why I painted that dark background in first of all, so that I would have this glowing effect going on. Keep bringing these little coats of light onto here to build them up, and then the dark will just glow through underneath. We should get this beautiful effect of the feathery textures of the cockerel. Just want to add a little bit of white to that colour now as well, to try and really pick out some of the highlights of the feathers as we get lighter and lighter. We just let these cockerels come out of the dark almost at us, just glowing. Leave that and come back down to here, this bit of this feeder, this drinker around the back, sorry. And let's just feel some of those colours going into there. Just scumbling them over the top to feel the corroded bit of old tin that's underneath here. Just letting the surface, feeling that surface out of the darkness here. Trying to find that cockerel's leg just there. Scales on it. That's much lighter as it comes up into here. And again we'll feel a little bit of yellow on there for the sunshine. Play our cools against our warms. Light behind here now, brighter on that cockerel's leg, just catching again. Little bits of colour at the moment, just feeling our way. While it's on the brush, use it. Just little marks, fluffy feather marks to gradually build her up. So that we appear to be sucking them out of the surface of the canvas almost, don't we? And then this cockerel's feathers here, which are much lighter against the dark of the other one behind. And with these little short brush strokes we can get the feeling of the cockerel. the foot of the chicken there. And we'll put in a little bit of the pink here into her face. Well, I've got that pink on the brush. Really start looking for these colours because we want to get the beauty of these cockerels. And that's a lot of our cools done, so we are going to have to pull together a few more of the cools in the background here on this hen, I think. Just a little blue up. Come in a bit more detail on her later. Just for the moment we just want to feel surfaces. And we start to build up the warms. Let's put some of the yellows on first. Some lovely golden yellows down here. See how we're dragging this picture gradually out of the surface. We're going from our darker, our mid-tones into our lighter tones. We're not rushing straight in with the bright oranges. They come at the end. At first we just want to make a oneness, a feeling of unity in the painting. These cock hackles coming across. Short strokes, just like the hackles actually are. Building up, and every layer I put on, the colour becomes a bit stronger. See the cockerel appearing out of the gloom, all these reflective colours going on. We're nowhere near finished yet, we're still building up these colours. Only now do we start to really come to the very bright colours, the stronger colours. Towards the very end of the painting, as we're building up these last glazes, and we really want the colours to work and shine out. And as the colours sink back in, so I come back and just flick in a little more here and there. Now, just come back with some of the darks that we started off with, just to try and soften some of the things back in again, in fact. This chicken here, for instance, has some darker feathers coming down here. That will gradually soften into the background now. We'll come back to the cockerels too. If they need any dark anywhere else, which they do, a bit down here. I need to go down to a finer brush to start finishing off our details. Little bits of colour like this now, playing the warm against the cool. Here I'm using a very light blue just to pick out the reds and give a bit more sheen to the cockerel himself. Only one or two of these bits of light blue amongst his feathers too, just to bring out the opposite colours. Now then we've got a drinker here which we haven't actually finished in detail. Just bring a little bit more detail into this. And there we almost have our finished piece. I think we could do with just taking down that background a bit more. I'll just put a bit more glazing over there just to darken it. Just let her come out of the depths a bit more. I'm just going to go back to my larger brushes and just indicate the foreground a little more. A little bit more yellow, orange back into there. I'll soften it in just a moment. I just want to bring back the feeling of a surface which we've lost a little bit. Just glaze some of this mauve in a touch. Just want a bit more colour going on down through here. A few last bits of colour in just to brighten things up, eh? These highlights that can make such a difference at the end of a painting. And bring forward this business of the chiaroscuro, the light and dark that I was trying to get the effect of originally, if you remember, from the very start of the painting. A few little bits of light just to catch. I think we're about done. We're not going to do much more on that. I'll just touch a few darks here and there, but that's about it. Right, I can carry on working and put more and more detail, but actually, you know me, I don't want to. So I'm going to leave it at that. Just put a very light signature down here in the corner. I think I'd like a little bit more indication of form here. There's not a lot going on in the background there, and I just like to put a bit more. There's something happening back here, even if it's not a lot. As usual, my recommendation being that if you start loose, you can finish tight. If you start tight, with your stuff. And one thing I don't like about people doing pen and ink very often, students coming in, is if you do the watercolour first and then do pen and ink afterwards, it looks like a chicken's been going at it. You know, you do far too many lines, you get far too... If you do your pen and ink work first and make a nice pen and ink drawing and then tint it afterwards, you're likely to be more successful, I find. You don't overdo the amount of pen, it doesn't get too scratchy and too fiddly. So it's just a warning. Some people, when they're used to it, when you get more advanced, okay, you can just pick it out a bit with a pen and ink, but why are we even using pen and ink? I'm always a bit wary, you know, as to why you want to do that, because it becomes a coloured drawing, doesn't it? But it can be very effective. So what I want to do today is, first of all, we're going to start off with my little jar of black ink. I'll cover the colours here. Just use that bit of stick first to dip in, and then get into a brush. Chinese don't draw with pencils. I mean, they're drawing with a brush the whole time. A brush is a far nicer medium than a pencil. It's far more fluid and flowing. You get much nicer shapes. And,
cavemen didn't have brushes, did they?
for fingers. This is what we're getting into with these big abstracts. You know, fingers, hands, palette knives, painting, whatever. So let's just straight away start working in some darks. And obviously, if you're working on a flat, this is probably easier than me working vertically, because working on the flat is going to come off the stick more easily. If I put the stick back, it's going to be better for me. But yes, normally I can draw a line quite long, you see, with the stick like that, get it going, as I can with the brush. So a piece of stick is very effective. I'm just going to put some of these darks in and try and keep out of your way. You're still all right behind me. Can you see? I can see you're stretching across there a bit. There is a seat in the middle behind the camera if you want it there, so do feel you can move if you can't quite see.
Would you normally draw it out with a pencil first?
Now, when I'm doing a loose watercolour, although it might be loose when I paint, you can't paint into a bad drawing, you know. I mean, when I'm doing an actual painting like one of these, well, that watercolour like the one in the middle, I'd be a bit more careful about. But when I'm doing a larger oil or something, all I need is the basics, and I can work with it, I can draw as I'm painting. But if I'm going to do a figure painting or something like this, or that watercolour in the middle, then I draw fairly carefully. But I don't go putting in all the eyes and nose and all the little dots and dashes, just the basic outline, so I know where forms are going to be. If you don't, then I can go loose within those shapes, but if I have bad shapes to start with, it's going to make it even worse, it'll enhance them. So yeah, it's not a good idea. Another nice thing to draw with, if you're doing large pastels on pastel paper, is a cotton, you know, the cotton wool bud on the stick. Dip those into Indian ink and actually work those up. It can be very useful with working the darks up for the pastel before you even start. So that's quite fun to do as well. Something we may well do in the future, and I'll show you. But I'm just going to be fairly loose with this stick work at the moment. I just want to get some texturing going on. The pencil lines always seem to disappear all right. People often say, well, we can see your pencil lines at the moment. You do find with watercolour that those pencil marks tend to just vanish as you go on. Not too worried about that. So yes, stick rather than pen. If I want to use a pen, I no longer use the old dip pens. These waterproof Profi pens, of which you can get them in all those various point sizes anyway. And they last for ages, provided you keep the top on. They shouldn't dry out. So I've got the dip pens, but I hardly ever use them now. Now, because I've got a lot of darks here, I've got a choice. Do I work in? I don't normally use black at all. I mean, I wouldn't normally do this pen and ink or brush work with the black. It's just sort of a demonstration today. Now I could do all that dark area with the black and with a larger mop and then thin it out and do watches and all sorts. It's just really to show the versatility of how we can work with this. And so that's the beauty of the brush, is that the stick will give you a lovely even line, especially flat, but the brush you can go into detail or not by your choice. Water, I'm going to go a little bit of wash onto there, let that flood in. So normally I'd be doing this with colour rather than tone. Got a little bit of fun. As an impressionist, then I don't believe in black as a colour unless I'm going to use it as a blue. Quite good for green actually at times, the yellow. Because where there is light, there has to be colour. So there cannot be pure white and there cannot be pure black because. So we can paint it like watercolour, the Indian ink. or we can paint into more detail. So you can paint finely or heavily, and again now if I want to come down, just to give you the technique, so you can then make your minds up as to how you're going to use this yourself in your paintings as you go along. This would probably, the last time I did this as a demonstration, I did birch trees, and that worked much better than this, as a subject, much better than this, because you can imagine all the twigs of the birch trees. I started with the brush, building up the darks amongst the birch trees and all the roots and the shadows. Then I went on to the stick and finished off the medium branches, and I finished with the Profi pen for the very, very fine ones. We were using £140 knot paper, an intermediate paper today, although a hot press would be just as good for this pen and ink work. With pen and ink work, I always prefer to do the pen and ink first and then the watercolour wash afterwards, otherwise you can get rather busy and scratchety with it. Piece of stick to do stick and ink with the Indian ink, a bottle of Indian ink, 2 waterproof fine line pens, which are great for doing the fine twigs and branches or cross-hatching work, a small brush, and I'll have my wash brush as well, just to finish off with the washes. And that should be all I need. And I'm going to start off with my heavier work. I'm going to start off with my stick and ink work, with the stick and a little bit of Indian ink, pour some into my palette. Indian ink, wonderful stuff, waterproof afterwards, once it's dried, but be careful where you get it, because obviously it's very dangerous stuff in the fact that it is waterproof, and if you get it all over yourself, you can be in a right mess. So a stick and ink, brush and ink are both beautiful ways to work. So I can work with either my stick or my brush to do this sort of work. It's amazing how much of a line you can make with a bit of stick like this. I'll just dip it into my palette and you'll see what I mean. I'm not going to even bother drawing in pencil on this. I'm just going to go straight in with the stick. So this paper is very absorbent. It's actually a bit nicer on ordinary cartridge paper. So you come down to the finer pens and you can do your finer details, obviously. Little bits and pieces if you want them. So you've got your three ways then. You've got your fine pen, you've got the stick, and you've got the brushes.
What if you make it too dark? How do you get rid of it?
Well, you see I'm working up from my my lights to my darks in a way, aren't I? I put the water in there, I'm now dropping in the dark. So I can control it more that way. I didn't go straight in with the dark, except where I'm absolutely sure of something, like where I am now, for instance. I know it's very dark there. So I can put these darks in. Now you have got that thing with Indian ink, once it's on, it's like the Chinagraph pencil. Were you here when I used Chinagraph pencil? Yeah. The Chinagraph pencil, you know, you want to go on first with your ordinary pencil to get your drawing right, and then go on with the Chinagraph pencils afterwards, because if you don't, you can't get them off. And this is the thing with the Indian ink. Once it's on, it's there. So if you're going to try this technique of playing with inks and pens and washes, yeah, you've got to be fairly sure of yourself. And let a little bit of dry brushwork come into it if you want, even on a paper like this, just dragging it across the side. I want more texture on this surface here, so there's no harm in my doing a little bit of dry brush across that to get that to start to feel that slightly gravelly softness of the concrete. So it isn't a matter of me coming in and you doing what I'm doing, it's a matter of me coming in and hopefully giving you ideas which you can then use in the way you want to do later. Right, so a different way than you've been used to using watercolour. Now, let that dry for a second, and we'll start dropping some colour on. Whereas that slightly stiffer brush will go over the surface of a rough paper. So the reason I've got those stiffer brushes is that I've got the soft brush to get in there and do my mop work, and I've got the stiffer brush to do the dry brush work over the surfaces. Now that's a flat, and obviously various sizes of flats are good. I may even use one here in a minute. If I want to put windows in or brickwork in or whatever, then a square brush, square object. It makes sense, round brush, round object. And for most of my oil painting I use filberts, which are a flat but curved edge. I haven't got any here because I don't need them. But they're a flat, a flat brush but with a curved end rather than square end. The square-ended brushes were invented by the Impressionists for painting little spots of broken colour. Broken colour being, you want to make orange, you mix red and yellow. But if you want to make it as broken colour, you put red and yellow dots next to each other, and from a distance, the brain is fooled, the eye is fooled, and it looks a bright, vivid orange. In the same way as in watercolour, if we mix some colours and put them on, they look duller than actually dropping one into another. So if I had a yellow ground and I drop red into it, I might get a brighter colour than mixing the two to start with. Yeah? Strange things that go on. Even choosing which colours I'm going to use. Aureolin yellow is a beautiful light lemon yellow, but transparent. Lemon yellow is opaque, it's deader. And if you mix aureolin yellow with, say, rose, you get a beautiful colour. Not the same with the lemon.
Mix aureolin with what?
Aureolin, rose.
Rose.
Yeah, rose into that, or yeah, beautiful. You know, drop the two in. That gives you a smashing sort of orangey red.
Yeah.
The same way with these azaleas. There's a lovely flame orange azalea, and we discovered the only colour you could do it was chrome yellow and rose. You had to use the two. But you know, unusual colours you wouldn't normally think of mixing. But to find them for that one was the more pink one. That was cobalt violet and rose and purple. To get the three. Lemon yellow is a cool yellow. Chrome yellow gets warmer. Cadmium orange beat going towards the red end, warmer still. In the blues, we've got our cerulean blue, which is a cool blue, right through to the ultramarine, which is much warmer, into the purples. In the reds, you've got your orange end, you know, the cadmiums again, right through then to the purples at the other stage. So in our greens, it's the same. We can see some very cool greens here, almost to the blues, and very warm greens there. It's vital that you play those one to another. So just a bit of fun. I'm going to take, because you just discussed with me about the aureolin yellow, which I noticed in the aircraft has come across the edge of my palette here. It's a quite greeny yellow at first, but let's just drop a bit of that in there. And you see how a lovely transparent yellow that is. It's a beautiful yellow. I'm going to go right across the darks, and being a fairly transparent yellow, it's not coating that too much. Now if I made a mistake in my painting and I wanted to put a bit of more opaque back on there, then I could use the lemon yellow. So let's see if I can get my lemon yellow wet enough to do that. It looks much lighter in the palette, but I put a bit of lemon yellow on there. You can see how that covers it much more, but it's also deader, it's more inert. Down there, put a little bit down here. It's not as lively as that Aureolin yellow. So, and then you can see in the palette how it goes much warmer. We've got round to the chrome yellow and then the orange, the cadmium orange there. So rather than mixing in the palette now, I'm going to take a little bit of the cerulean blue. I just let that drop into my yellow there to give a nice fresh green. Look for those colours, enjoy yourselves.
What colour is that?
That's purple, just purple. Bit blue there. It's a little bit warmer, so I'll put a little bit of Quiquadrone gold in. Quiquadrone gold's quite nice. It's a sort of more browny yellow than yellow ochre, Quiquadrone gold. Useful for tiles and things. When you mix it with the reds and oranges, it's useful for tiles on French roofs and things. Put a bit of that over here as well. Bit of Quiquadrone gold. Yes, good colour. Just so I can show you what it's about. There we are. Look, a nice sort of browny, orangey red. But if I say that now, if I put some just for fun. I mean, I'm really having. I'm here to do a demonstration. I'm not here to. I'm here to enjoy myself too, yeah. But I'm not here to do a painting to sell. I'm doing a painting to show you. Now that's the burnt sienna against it. So now you can see that it's a much more orangey brown than. It's quite fun, isn't it? And then we'll come across to here. Much lighter down to our arms here. Get the feeling of sunlight, shall we? Not sunlight. Miserable. God, I missed the worst weather, I gather. You've had 2 weeks of rain. It was lovely over there.
We don't wish to know that.
And then they tell us we haven't had enough.
Okay, yeah, well, a hosepipe band's still on, isn't it? Yeah, and you think, well, good, how much rain do you need for it?
Not the right sort of rain.
Not the right sort of rain, it's not wet enough. Some of those greens, you want to keep the thing coherent, so you'll often find one colour coming into another. So these greens may well be coming into the shadows here to help pull it together. Because in that space of time, I haven't really got a lot of time to look at things and actually get them right. Now I can come back in again with this and just play around a bit more, trying to get a few of these colours that weren't quite there back. Well, here we are then, texturing over the watercolour. I've brightened it up quite a bit, a bit more vibrance, and just brought that painting back. I've just been to do this demonstration here, and it was really interesting because in going back to do this for the North Links Art Society, they very kindly invited me to demonstrate at a hotel there, which is right near to Grimsby Technical College. And the hotel turned out to be the very house I used to live in when I was a student at Grimsby College myself over 40 years ago. And my old flat has now been turned into the ladies' toilet. So I'll show you a little bit of filming here of the college, and then some of the area that I used to have as my old haunting ground. The park was rather fun to go and draw in. And I'll show you some of the work that I did as a student then, all those years ago when I was only 18, and what the place looks like now. And then we'll get into the atmosphere of the demonstration, the Art Society, and make a start on this painting and how we can paint a very large and loose piece of work in watercolour with this style. Okay, no worries. Normally I manage half this size in 2 hours, so really going to push me. I start with the midtones. If I'm working with more opaque paints, especially at the horizon, if I work from the horizon in a painting, it's usually the midtones, and then I work outwards. And I paint all my midtones right the way throughout the painting, getting an effect of light. I'm after an effect of light here first of all, and then gradually pulling the detail out. So I get a coherence, a oneness. And then I'll work into my darks and I'll finish with my highlights. We've got sunlight coming over something, so that's the highlights at the end, doesn't it? It makes sense, and it's great fun. The painting just suddenly comes together. It's alive, it's vibrant. But here I want to concentrate on possibly something like, where's that camera? Can we get it on there? That way a bit. I want to concentrate on her face, things like this figure, the back of her head, maybe these chairs, they can go in later on, these bits of sign work. Those are my salient sorts of points in this particular picture, all right? Once I've got those, then I can start to work far more loosely around it and become looser and looser. I may decide to leave a slight vignette at the side rather than paint right to the edges. It's all part of the composition. You don't have to paint right to the edges of things. And I've got to decide where I'm going to just paint right to where I'm going to paint tighter. A watercolour is always a battle. You have to plan quite a bit of it ahead. So I've already had a quick look and decided that's where I'm going to start. And we've got cool and warm yellows. Now, in every single colour, there is a cool and warm. In yellow, it would be the lemon yellow or the aureolin yellow as a cool. It would be the yellow ochre or the raw sienna as a warm. In the reds, it's going to be cadmium towards the warms, it's going to be the alizarin towards the cools. In the greens, we've got our sap greens towards the warm, or the viridian again towards the, not alizarin I meant in the cool reds, the viridian towards the cool greens. Usually mix most of my greens anyway, and that's a good test for a beginner. If you want to learn about making greens, take all the blues you've got and all the yellows you've got and do a colour chart. See how many different variations of green you can get by trying those various blues and yellows out together. I want to paint wet into wet here on this figure, just coming down between, let's have a look, yeah, that's a white bit there, but to leave that, so just, I like to start with a fairly damp surface, so I'm just going to work that bit first of all. And foundation colour, straight to, I think in this case, a little bit of cadmium orange, oh man, that's a lot, it is wet, and a wee touch of Indian red, just to get this colour going. And remember that watercolour dries a couple of tones lighter than when you put it on, so that might seem quite strong now, but actually it's going to be quite light when it dries out, and I can drop into that. I'm just going to feel my way through. I've got to get myself going, motivated going. So that's my base colour. Now a wash is your first coat like that, a thin coat. A glaze would be a second coat over that when it's dry. And so I don't know how much all of you know. All I can do is chat along and hope that some of it you don't know and some of it you will. Now while that's still wet, I can start working into that. And this particular painting I want to be very colourful. I'm not going to go limited palette, I'm going to really push my full palette here and have some fun. I want to enjoy it as well. And if I'm enjoying it, hopefully you will. So I'll have a good bit of fun with it. So I'm going to go right down to a purple now. Deliberately come in with quite a strong purple into there, in my darks, into the hair here straight away. While it's wet into wet, and just let the paint be the accent. I'm working obviously on the vertical, so I'm going to be a little bit careful because things are going to start all flowing downwards. I'm going to try and use gravity to my benefit, which is more than my figure can say. Honestly, I put on, God, I've been staying at 14.5 stone for about 3 years, and I got back up to 15, and it's Christmas, and I just can't get it off again. So maybe this trip to Colombia will do it, because the person I'm staying with is a vegetarian, so I can lay off the meats. A little bit warmer there. I'm going to take a little bit of rose and just drop it in. Now remember that rather than always mixing colours on the palette, you can very often get a nicer effect by dropping colours one into another here on the paper. Right.
Is that a sable brush you're using?
This is my artificial, I can't sable, what's then? This is my Pro Art nylon, which is the same sort of thing, yeah, but the nylon, I find the nylons these days are so good for the money that you know, you don't, if you can afford the sable's fine, but I just try and get away with nylons, nearly everything. I like nylons. You know, if you look through my set here, there's a use for everything. It isn't like a fisherman with 200 floats, and he only uses two all the time, his favourites. I don't use just one or two brushes. I have my favourites. Like Ron Ransom, I could use a hake and a rigger, or I can use my mop and a round and get away with nearly everything. But for this purpose, I'm also going to be using swords. And the reason for the swords in this particular painting is because of the control I've got to paint single shapes and twist the brush. So for this particular effort, swords are very, very useful. They also will give me a fine line as well, rather than use a rigger. And the flats I'm going to save till the end for doing my loose brushwork. Right, that's some of my warms gone in. Now into that, let's take a little bit of some Prussian and darken the outside of that straight away. So I am painting a little bit by numbers here. I'm painting bits in at a time at the moment, just to get the effects I want. But nice soft effects of light. I'm not painting in all the little bits of hair and tweaking in the eyes, and don't be doing all that. Now watercolour, we're always painting the darks and leaving the lights behind, rather than any other medium, which is opaque, where we're doing the opposite, and we can go both ways, or we can paint lights over darks. Here I can't. So I've got to gradually work up my darks, just softly at the moment, just indicating. I don't want to get too much detail, I'm just indicating these shapes I don't let the eye do the work. Let the viewer do some work. Don't do it all for them. They get bored. Let them imagine things in it. He does a lot of that at the moment, but then I can't imagine half the stuff he does. Well, this primitive art's all very well, but give me a couple of walls in the Royal Academy, I'll do a few big ones too, I tell you. It's who you know, not what you know again, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, a bit more warmth into there. While it's still wet, now we've got to watch cauliflowers here because I'm painting sort of just at the edge of my... I'm just dropping in a few more warms into there. But you can get the feel of it coming already, you know, just soft, simple, keep it simple. But it's a lot warmer here. I want a little bit more warmth there. I'm going to take just a touch of clean my brush again. I'm going to drink this later probably. One of my students the other day ruined a cup of tea, stuck a brush in it. How often do we do that? Yeah, a little bit warmer there. Take a little bit of cadmium. And the cadmium is a little bit more opaque. I'm just going to drop that in down at the chest here. You see the difference that makes. Now, when something on a painting doesn't look right, it isn't always that same thing. It could well be something next to it. Example, painting a sunrise at Bridlington, and it was a really orange sun coming up bright, and I put more and more yellow, more and more orange. It wasn't working. Stupid man. Do the opposite. In our armoury, we've got warm against cool, light against dark, rough against smooth. We've got the opposites in the colour circle. We've got our complementary colours, all of that going on. So all I did was put in more cools, and the sun, then the oranges became more, it's the opposites, isn't it? So one colour in a painting can change the whole thing. You notice, now I've said it, some of you haven't, if you haven't noticed it, in nearly every one of Constable's landscapes there'll be a little red figure.
Oh, yes.
Why? You said yes, go on, why?
I don't know.
Shut up there. No, it's not to do with the mouse or whatever. It's because red is the opposite to green in the colour circle. And it will make the green seem greener. That one little dot of red will make all the green seem greener. So this is what we're doing. If you wanted to paint a fluorescent coat on somebody, you wouldn't use fluorescent paint. If you wanted to paint a silver pot, you wouldn't use silver paint. You would use the correct colours relevant one to another, the reflections in the glass, the reflections on the silver. You'd paint those colours. So we want the fluorescent pink to look very bright, then we'd have to use something in the opposite side. So if I want a very bright beach scene with bright sand, midday, then I would use, say, chrome yellow for the sand, but I'd use purple, which is the opposite to yellow, on the shadows. If I wanted a duller beach scene, a day like today, then I'd be using yellow ochre or sienna, and possibly just the burnt sienna for the shadows, which would give me a much softer, still a stronger colour. And tonally, remember the difference, that if we photograph this, the tones would look quite different in black and white than they will in colour intensity. A yellow looks far brighter than a blue, but it isn't in fact. So tonally, you've got to squint down for something. Whenever you're looking for something and you want to see the tones, squint your eyes down, and it cuts the light down and you then see the tones more clearly, okay? If you haven't tried that, try it. You can see that. It cuts it right down to almost black and white, you know. And for colour, widen your eyes even more to see more. So tone, squint down, colour, see more. Oh dear, there's so much to do. This is just one session. Oh. Right, now I'm going to go a bit cooler on my reds. I'm going to go right through. Oops, I'm going to go right through here. I don't want to push. If I'm going to do this in 2 hours, I've got to really get on. Stop nattering so much. I've got to really get on and get some colour going here for you. Let's get that red onto there, right through with a little bit of yellow in it. To hell with that. Right down the chest. Here we go. And then we'll drop in while it's still wet. The darks around the edge here. Let them spread down. Controlled accident. I can come in later and tidy this up. Now, somebody said to me the other day, because for my students, I've been doing lessons in perspective, and I sit down and we have a whole session together where I'll do all, talk about aerial perspective and linear perspective and so on. Can I do the same with colour? Can I do a session on colour? I said, well, not really, because every one of my paintings is going to be different, because I capture the time of day, the moment and the mood. I'm not... I can't say you paint flesh just with this colour. Every single painting I do will be a series of different colours. So there isn't just one colour for flesh. It isn't green trees, blue sky, pink flesh and the rest of it. It's totally dependent on the light and the mood and the atmosphere I want to get at the time. Let that dry a little, otherwise it's all going to flow too far. Now the other one it's dried just enough for me to come back and just go in again, this time with a glaze. And remember, with glazing, we're playing with lost and found edges. So in other words, I can soften an edge anytime I want with a little bit of clean water. That's a hard edge because I'm now painting wet onto dry. Wet next to wet, soft, wet onto wet, soft, wet onto dry, hard edge. Got a hard edge there for more detail if I want it. Coming up here, I'll just put the bit of indicator parting coming there, coming down there, back of the head. So we're bringing her out, we're just indicating, giving an impression, so I can soften that a fraction there, with a bit of dry brush work down there. That's it, leave it alone. Up to him, working with my lightest colour first. His coat is a very light mauve, but I'm not going to start with that. I'm going to start with a bit of rose, and I'm going to drop my colours into that. Leave a couple of white lines down there. And now I'm going to go to the cooler colour. I should come over that with a little bit of cerulean blue and cool that down a bit, get the shadows going in there. Under his arm, just indicating, just feeling it. Let the wet in the wet do the job. Now coming down here, talking about the cerulean blue, well, I've got cerulean blue. When you've got something on your brush, it's often wise to use it wherever, because, so as you're mixing up again, let that come in, let that dry off a little bit. Anywhere else? Yes, while we're at it, up here. So painting by numbers, fill in these shapes. It's blue, yeah, in the background here, bit of blue there. That's blue cerulean on the coat here, but coming into it is a bit of green, so I'm going to bring a little bit of viridian into that. Just let that melt in, just an indication. What I'm going to do is indicate very, very loosely at this stage. Right, now back to him as it's dried off just enough now. I hope to start putting in some of the darker colours, a little bit of that Prussian, and we'll come in into his shadow here. Let that just trickle down the side of his trouser, quite simply. I could be using a sword now to do this, but as the figures are so big, my mop's going to do me for most of my painting. I'm also quite a lazy painter, can't be bothered to change brushes, but quite simple. Just get in there and we've got the effect. Under that arm, around here. Now, back of his head. A little bit of warmth down the side, top. That's it, it'll do. Green up here. Keep it simple, keep it easy, don't get bogged down. Keep the whole thing working if you can. Right, that person there. Very light pink to start with, a little bit of rose and a thin glaze. There we go, over that, all the way down. I think I'll go right through the trousers there because I want to get a purple there in a minute. Down to there. Then the stronger red, take a bit of the cadmium, or bright red, either would do. Drop that in, you see how strong we get that. Now, broken colour works by one colour glowing through another. By dropping one colour into another like this, I am getting a brighter effect than if I mix them, because the colour is almost just glowing through it. Oh, I've got that on my brush, let's put the traffic light in. If I'm using opaque paint and I wanted broken colour, also I've got a bit of mauve now, then if I paint yellow spots next to red spots, I'm going to have the effect of the eye being fooled to make it look like orange. And that's a very vibrant way to work, and it's the way I often do work. So I'll let that dry a bit now. I'm going to go back to here again because that's dried off enough. A little bit warmer, fraction alizarin into that. And we'll come back and make this a bit darker. We'll go quite strong because it's going to go lighter later. Blue there, and around the front. Right down the side of the head, down there. Now, take a smaller brush just for a minute. And this is where we might need to blend in. So wet the edge and let that just flow down into the water and soften off like that, look. And while that's on my brush, I can use the same paint just to indicate down the side of the nose, just to make it simple. We're not using flesh colours, I'm using the colours that are there. Onto another. And just soften that neck, curve it round a little bit with some clean water. Quick as that. Back to my mop. And down to this figure again, where there was a brighter purple. Should be dry enough now just to lay in a little bit of darker colour. Not quite, let's get a bit stronger. We have two ways of doing this. We can put one glaze over another to make something stronger. In other words, the paint is dry. Paint the same paint you just painted as the wash as a glaze over the top, and you've got twice the amount of paint, therefore it's a glaze. Equally, I could put more pigment like that onto the paper and let that work in. It's still just wet enough to do. So in this case I'm not using a glaze, I'm still dropping wet into wet. And it's a little bit of shadow coming down there. And behind the figure there. Now, so I'm still treating the whole thing very loosely. I'm going to be even looser yet when I get going. That's a bit warmer up here. Hair, sunshine, and then into that a little bit of burnt sienna to come around the edge there, and maybe a little bit of purple later. We'll just give that an effect on the hair there. While I've got that on my brush, there we are, bit of the cake, gâteau, patisserie. And this girl's hair. It's fairly cool, that yellow there, and then it goes to a warmer one there. So let's give her a little bit of the aureolin yellow, which is that lovely lemon look. It's much nicer than the lemon, I think. And I'm going to give the whole of her hair that. If you want to leave a bit of sparkle in the paper, you can. It's up to you. Then I'm going to come to my warmer yellow, and let's now come to the raw sienna and start to drop that in a bit more up here. You all awake still? Good.
Yeah.
Trying to keep you alive. Because I enjoy it. I mean, you know, I'm nattering away here to try and impart more for you, but I just happily just carry on painting. If you weren't there, I'd just carry on painting. Right, and warmer still. Let's take a bit of the burnt sienna. Drop that in up here. See, lovely colours. A little bit stronger than you might think because we know they're going to go lighter. And let the watercolour do the work for you, the wet into wet. Whichever medium we're using, use it for the beauty of the medium, which is what I'm always saying with my students. They bring me a photograph along and say, well, what are you trying to do here? You're going to copy this photograph, and if so, why? So I make them question what they're doing a bit. We don't just copy. And then we say, well, okay, the field of hay wange you're about to do here, of all these huge round bales of hay, why are you doing it? It's going to be awful just trying to copy that with just acrylic or whatever. So we build it up in that technique I've just shown you, and then we get all this lovely texture going, and it becomes a work of art, not just a reproduction of the photograph. I am making a work of art, and it's about watercolour. It's about this beauty of the medium I'm using. Yeah, it's not going to be a copy of this photograph. Not what I want. Might as well put the photograph up for that. I am doing a painting, and I want to get something a bit more special out of it. So I'm going to work into this more. While it's still wet, let's get these effects of gradually building it up here. Get her hair, not by painting little lines of hair in, but just by painting the right shapes in the right places gradually. Just a bit more deeper blue in there. That's how that blue makes a difference to the warms. I'll go warmer again. Right down there. If I make a mistake, I can lift out. Remember, I can take the brush, clean the brush, dry it, and come back in and lift a colour out. Now while I'm at this, I do want to link up the very dark colour there with the hair. So I'm going to just come in with some indigo and a little bit of burnt sienna and really whack in that shape right now. And oops, I need to do that, but never mind, coming later, a bit of perspective. Don't worry about things, don't panic, just, I'm telling myself anyway. And I need a little bit of white. I haven't masked this particular picture. The other one I was going to do for you, if I hadn't got time today, was all masked up and everything else, but I'm going to go to masking fluid on this for the minute. Let's see, that dark comes down there. A bit loose, keep it just. And here we go again. Let's really get in there now. A bit more of the Prussian now. And then more sienna to make it a bit warmer. Feeling these shapes, keep it lovely and loose. It's lovely just filling in a shape, you know. Enjoy it, enjoy your watercolour. And don't get all bogged down with having to paint little details. This is a lovely way to paint loosely. All of these ways I'm showing you in the oils and this, it's just a lovely way to paint. Well, I'm at that colour and I've got some blue on my brush. Let's look at the other blues. One blue next to another will totally change things anyway. So on we go, leave a bit of paper showing there. Let that dry off a bit. Over here it's much lighter. I'm going to get in the way. You can see all right behind me there, so I'm going to get in the way too much for you. You can see how quickly it starts to come. And it's the same with the oil painting. I normally have to finish an oil painting on plein air within 2 to 3 hours, otherwise the light is changing. Right, back to this guy here. It's just dry enough now to start working in, quite simply, shadows and a few creases, just indicating, nice and loosely. There we are. Shadows under his arm, dark line down the back, a little bit more darker hair at the top here, back of his head. Keep it as one stroke if you can. Simple one stroke painting. A bit dark behind there. And there's a little bit of warmth going on. On his trousers, just a little bit of a tone going. His pants here. Not much, that's it, that's all we need. That green needs to be a little bit stronger. A little bit there just to indicate. Okay. The warmth that we wanted, back of the head there now needs to be picked out a little bit more, and the dark down, there they are. Light against dark, rough against smooth, cool against warm, gradually building it up. Now I carry cerulean blue as my coolest, then cobalt blue, which is this one. It's a lovely blue. And then ultramarine, which is this one, which is a warmer blue. And then we start to go towards, and then I cover in Prussian, and we start to go towards the purples. Try and keep simple brushstrokes, keep it nice and clean. Take some cobalt violet, colour you cannot make, so it's a very useful colour look. Lovely light purpley pink. Can't make it, so it's one you need to buy. Now I'm not going to paint all the patterns in, I'm just going to indicate and gradually, with the impression of, we're painting an impressionist watercolour here, nice and lively and loose. How am I doing? Oh, we're not doing badly, it's half an hour into it, so, you know, it's quite a rapid way of working, isn't it, you see? And hopefully it's keeping you awake, I promised I'd do that. Am I all right so far then?
Yes,
you down or
I
something?
made notes, Peter, you're all right.
Well, if I want to get invited back again, I've got to be good to you, you know. After that food today. No, it's really nice to come over and, you know, it's just like deja vu, really, coming back to the actual place where I used to be as a student. It's quite weird. Playing one colour against the different blues against another and the different purples, gradually building them up. Right, these little figures back here, go to a slightly smaller brush. I'm going to go to now, because I'm going smaller, I'm going to go to a sword now. And I can just manipulate that, so if I want to, I can take, say, in this case, a bit of Indian red, and go across his face, but I can twist the brush as I go to do it just in one stroke, see, like that. And the same with the little bits in here, a little bit more. So the swords are quite useful, because you've got that manipulative quality. Just keep it all lovely and simple and just make an indication of things. Let me go back in there again. And drop in some more of the reds to make those warms seem a little bit cooler. So if I put a stronger colour next to another colour, it makes that previous colour look lighter and so on. That will do. And that is a very, very, I'll take some of that cobalt violet and just drop that in there like that. And he's got a slight check shirt, so we'll take a little bit of the blue and just indicate with a few lines that he has that check shirt. Now getting back on that, the gold, let's go through here, just indicating then those light bottles, a little bit greener back there, so a bit of blue into it, some deader, more inert grey just there. I'm going to take my mop again because there's a large dark area here that I want. But I'm not, no, I won't do that dark area there yet. The reason being that I've got those leaves, and I want, obviously I've got to put dark around light, haven't I? I've got to plan ahead. So because I've got those leaves, I'm not going to put them in with gouache or lighter paint. I'll have to put those leaves in before I put that dark in there. So I'll plan that ahead in just a moment. Let's get that wagon in the back there for the minute. Now, let me start with that orangey colour again on the wagon, because I want to drop a red into it. Slightly pinker at the top, so we'll go back to my...
Do you have a favourite medium? Do you prefer waterton?
Nope. I just enjoy whatever I'm doing at the time. If I was stuck on a desert island, possibly pastel because it's so versatile, and water or whatever. But oils, I think, would be my tops, generally speaking, yeah. Now I want to get some darker, cool colours in the shadows here. I'm just going to drop in a bit more dark around her face and down here. She is a little bit more dark in there as well. So that's dry enough now to start painting a few harder edges, just indicating. The same here, I can just come in with one or two cools, just indicating a bit darker against that, the feeling of the hair a bit more. In fact, I'll take a little sword for that, because it's a bit curly and I can just get a bit more of a wave going just to indicate what's happening there. That's it.
You mentioned layering earlier and not following on top of an oil with an acrylic. Or
Yeah, you can put oils over acrylics, but not acrylics over oils, because of the actual medium.
But is that also true for water mixable oil? If you try to put acrylic on top of a water mixable oil, would that
You
work?
might get away with that because it might bond. I don't like them. I've tried some of my students and I find the colour, I don't know how you find them, but I find the colour just not, it makes muddy greys for me, that water soluble oil. I prefer the pure, but that's just me. I mean, if you like it, then it's worth trying it out. I can't see why what you're saying wouldn't work. It's a good point. Experiment. There are some things that just won't work, you know, but there's no hard and fast rule. If there was, I wouldn't have invented half the things I've done. I was one of the first people to start using acrylic inks and pastel waters over the top. What? How many years ago now? 20 plus? Because I wanted to invent this other way of working. And and I had a need for it, so just indicate that tree back there. Easy as that. A bit darker to blend in with the hair there, so that the shadows sort of come together a bit there. Half light. And down there. And keep it simple. When you're drawing shapes like hands and feet and so on, don't start to draw all the fingers. Draw that as a whole shape. Draw that outline like a bear's paw. And then come in afterwards with your fingers. Same with feet and limbs and things. Get the basic proportions first and then come in. If you try to draw all the fingers, it won't work. Same with drawing a bottle. If you're drawing a bottle, do a centre line as I've done there, and then work each side of it, because otherwise you end up with one bottle higher than the other, higher than the other. You know, keep the shapes simple. Feel across with a brush, dry brush there. This is why I use a rough paper for this one. If I was doing a very detailed painting, if I was doing the watercolour pencil, then I'd be using a hot press. But with this, I want to use the sparkle of the textural surface in the same way as I would if I were doing this as a seascape. I want that rough texture going on. Right. Now, let's get up here for this lettering. I think we need to get, whoa, let's just sit in there. Okay. It's got some lovely oranges and yellows going on up there. So I'm going to really whack into that now. And I do want that not to be too much dry brush work there, although I'm going to do a little bit. Take some chrome yellow. Look at that. Watercolour does not have to be dead. So many people think that you've got to... Well, Ron Ranson once said the same thing. Why do people have to paint watercolours as if they've got gauze over them? You know, you don't... it can be a wonderfully bright medium.
Do you use the same brand of paint?
Not necessarily. What have I got here? I think that's Winsor & Newton, these. But as long as they're artist watercolours, that's the important point. As long as you've got artist quality, it doesn't really... The paints don't make that... The colours I found are very similar. Papers, that's a different matter. Very different, yeah. You talked to me about papers and, you know, the amount of glue size a watercolour paper has in as compared to another. Let's leave that a little bit rough at the edges there, look. Yes, then, you know, you've got to experiment with your watercolour papers. I use a Waterford, no, a hot press, which one I use? Arches hot press. And I usually use Waterford for most of my other watercolour. But Bockingford's quite nice. Right into that with the orange. Just enjoy letting the watercolour do its thing, look. Don't pussyfoot, get in there and enjoy it. I'm now mixing on the paper.
And did you wet and stretch that paper?
It has been, yeah, for this job. Even though it's 300, because I'm using so much water, I don't always, very seldom actually, I mean I'm quite happy most of the time with just ordinary masking tape. Up to £140 anyway. Look for these colours. Photographs tend to always blanch things out, so you've really got to look for your colours. Let that dry off a bit now because I want to put the lettering in and I can't put the lettering in if it's wet. Let's have a look at this area of leaves down here. If I mix, now that's a fairly warm green. We have to remember with greens that they reflect the light and people have trouble with mixing various warm and cool greens. If you've got a very light blue sky, that's going to be reflecting onto shiny leaves and making light blue leaves. If you've got a stormy day and so on, it's very different. Here, it's underneath this canopy and it's very warm, it's very orange, isn't it? So I'm going to use the raw sienna and a little bit of the cerulean, and we'll get a fairly warm green for that look. I'm going to go a little bit more yellow, so a little bit more into there. Wet into wet, all the way down, it's lovely and loose, just feel those leafy shapes. no matter if some other colour comes into it. When I get the darker colours into this in a minute, it will make more sense, because I'm going to put much deeper, cooler shadows into this. All the way down, comes into the darks there. It's so big, this painting, it forced me to stand up. This is not good enough. Yeah.
You're
Extra
going to
money.
charge us extra.
Well, this is it, yeah. I should remember you for the future, not big one again. So not your group again, oh no. Right, while that's still wet, let's take some ultramarine and the same, the sienna. Just make a cooler version of it. And just drop these shapes in leafy shapes with the tip of the brush, feeling. I look with my eye at the surface and the object, and I transfer via my eye, through the brain, what little there is of it, left of it these days, to my fingertip, and I'm making marks about what my eye is feeling on the surface of this paper. So brush control and management are quite important. Brush skills are quite important in something like this, aren't they? Different brushes will give you different effects. You know, a fan brush is great for making winter trees, or for blending oils, for getting soft cloud effects. Rolling this brush will give me a different, and so on and so on. You need to really experiment with the brushes. The room's pretty warm as well, so I'm not surprised some of you are flagging a bit. I had another yawn there. But it's forgivable.
Very generous.
I am. I could put you in detention or stand you in the corner with it.
Naughty step next.
So you see how loosely we can paint. Good fun, yeah? You can make this as detailed as you want. You can carry on tightening up into this as much as you want. Yeah, well. And that's another thing. The amount of students I've had come to me who want to paint looser. And this is the way we go. And maybe we're painting with acrylic inks and making just a lovely sunflower effect of those colours coming out. I'll suddenly say, now stand back a minute and stop. Oh wow, what have I done? I don't want to go any further. With one or two touches of pastel, because they've created an abstract. In every figurative painting there's going to be the abstract qualities. It's quite hard to do an abstract painting, to do it well and intuitively. But in all of this, we are working very much about the abstract. Colour planes, fields, drawing, composition, intuition, they're all abstract things, aren't they? Right, I'm going to now take the, now this is a lovely colour to use, the burnt sienna and ultramarine blue give us one of our darkest, but it gives us a wonderful dark colour look.
So what colours? Ultramarine?
This is ultramarine and burnt sienna, one of the nicest colours for making a dark. Ultramarine also granulates on your paper. Anybody not know what that means, granulate? Right, so in other words, it granulates in between the texture of the paper, so when you're mixing it with this, it will do the same, it will granulate, so it can give you quite a nice effect as well. If you've got questions to ask, please, it doesn't matter what subject, just because we're doing watercolour, this is what my students often forget, is that whatever we're doing at the time will also link with another painting later. And, you know, just because you're learning one thing now doesn't mean to say that some of those things aren't going to come out in paintings later and be used in parallel. Now, that dark I couldn't put in here earlier, I can now go back to my Prussian and, again the same, the burnt sienna, and now I can paint that in whack and into there, look, and leave that light showing really loosely around that table, over that basket. So loose. I've not enough time to faff about and go into this in great detail, so I'm deliberately going to be painting very loosely.
If you're making and trees and that, do you always work down to light or light to dark or mix? Do a bit of that both?
If it's watercolour, you have to work...
No, acrylic.
Acrylic,
Yeah.
mid-tones, as I was just saying, work your mid-tones up and then go in with the darks and then finish with the sunlight over the top.
Light.
Yep, always finish with the lights over the top.
Yeah.
You can see how it's gradually pulling together, you know, just painting the right colours and the right shapes, and gradually the whole thing will pull together. And we put our darks in between, leaving the lights shining out. Now we're going to go back down to these trousers a bit darker under the trousers like that. Bring out those shadows a bit to bring the light out down the side of her face. A bit darker again there, just into that eye. A bit darker around the top of her head, just to catch this quite strong. The stronger the light, the stronger your shadows are going to be. So if you've got very strong sunlight, you've got very dark shadows and very light. Yesterday one of my students was failing with the landscape because he wanted a very grey Thedlethorpe day, you know, most of the year. She had this bright yellow background. I said, well, where's that come from? If you were doing a really bright beach scene, yes, but it isn't. So, you know, I said, here, no, tone this down. I made some various greys and started glazing with acrylics over those. And suddenly it came to shape and she could see what I meant. I'm just going to indicate these things. I'm not going to go into darks coming down. So we've got the table just starting to come out now. A little bit darker just there for that table, just to show the difference between the table and the table. No, not too much detail. More shadow going on down here around those. Right, round brush. How big's that one? Should do the job. Oh, right, okay. Yep, hits us all, even the best of them like me. Right. Now, you have a pointy brush. If you make it into a blade, by flattening it, you can paint a thinner line. Don't forget, your brush is quite versatile. You don't have to keep the brush as a point, you can make it as a blade. So for instance, I've made that into a slight blade. If I want to do a thinner line now, I can paint quite a thin line with it, or I can go in the opposite direction and paint a thicker line. Yeah? It seems obvious, but unless I say this to people, they forget and they think, I've got to use it. God, I had one student come to me, she was in Bridlington years ago, and she was so screwed up by the previous teacher. I felt so sorry for her to get her really loosened up. And the problem was, oh, well, my teacher said you can only put a wash on left to right, and it was all... These rules and regulations that people... yeah, it's control freaks, isn't there?
Do you often paint a landscape, for example, without actually doing any drawing? Just straight on with the paint?
Oh yes, can do all sorts, but I usually just mark out quickly. I just make a few, I need to know where my proportions are. So I just do that with my fingers and make a rectangle. For my students, I have a piece of card cut. A trick for you. Cut your piece of card to the proportions of the picture you want to do. Mark it into quarters and eighths. Don't measure it, mark it into quarters and eighths. Have 2 elastic bands and have one going each way. Now when you hold that up, if you're not sure of perspective, you can move the elastic band and put it against your painting to see your perspective, okay? And you also know your proportions, don't you? So first of all, I mean, your drawing, your original composition is made by the first 2 marks you ever make. Once I've decided the head is there and the chair is there, everything else goes to that, I measure it.
Yes.
So you use your camera obscura, your frame, to your composition. You then check the angles against your elastic bands and voila.
Yeah.
So lots of tips, but
Yeah. I think I'll do that.
You teach calligraphy as well, do you, Peter?
I have. But with the advent of computers, who needs? Thank God. All of that as a head of art and craft design and tech in the past and doing all the posters for every Tom, Dick and Harry, no longer necessary, no.
Have you tried painting with it?
Actually, it's a couple of minutes and we'll just I should carry on painting, all right? So if you want to carry on and sit or come back, I'll give you a 5-minute break or so. Is that all right in a few minutes? And I'll just carry on because I want to get as far as I can. And you take a little break and do what you need to do. Come over naturally if you want. Come up to here, have a look, talk with me about the brushes, anything else you want to do.
Do you sell your paintings online?
They're for sale online, but I haven't sold them for years online. When the computers, when all that first came out, there were lots of companies that were offering to sell your work online and so on, weren't there? People want to see the real thing, really. You need people's good galleries or exhibitions, or they won't. The DVDs, the teaching side, yes, because you can also see comments from the students. I mean, I've got about 200 comments from people who've looked at my films and enjoyed them, so you can see for real. Yeah, so have a little walk now if you want, or just come and talk, or 5 or 10 minutes, look, if you like. Well, I'm just going to carry on. Now, if I work quickly, I'm not going to lift the colour underneath too much. So you can see how that stiffer brush gives me a dry brush effect on there, yeah?
Yeah.
But if I'm working quickly, I'm not lifting those light colours. This paper's fairly absorbent. I mean, that exhibition, I just told a one-man show of 150 paintings, as I say, before Christmas, in the middle, top floor of the library here. And I asked both the galleries to come. And over that 2-week period, when I went back twice to see one of them, the one I preferred, and on the last day I was taking stuff down, oh, we've been so busy. They're literally 10 minutes, you know, how far they are. They couldn't find 10 minutes. We've been so busy. Oh, come on. I just find it insulting, I'm sorry.
That makes a difference, that, when you've done that, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
I thought, oh, you don't really need to do that, but it's...
Now you see what, yeah, it will bring everything out. It's just into base. It's warmed and it's cooled.
Colours in.
Oh, yeah.
Just feeling the surface. So I said I'd try and show you a nice and loose way to work. You've got the lights and darks going on behind. Just indications all the time, not trying to paint everything in detail, just indicating things. Now let's get that nice and dry, bit of brush for that, bit of dry brush there again, just on the surfaces here. Just to feel the surface a bit, right through things, don't be afraid. And you see how the whole thing starts to be pulled together. That means softening down, so we'll just link that in. That's too bright there. We can start to soften things in with a bit of water. Now you can start to pull together and do as much detail as you want. But you know, I can soften, I can blend these bits in. If it's too bright there, for instance, which it is, so just soften that down a bit. That coat needs bringing in a bit more there. A little bit more, not far off doing now for what I want to do for this. A bit more warmth in the background. Some of these, just indicating some of these doorways. So flat brush is very useful. About enough? Just to give you an idea. That's good. Yeah. So something. Well, I could carry on tidying up, but a loose watercolour that for the moment.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
That's really wonderful, Peter. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you for coming. Certainly one or two
Paintings in them. So that's the light one. And then we've got the dark one, which will bring out the grey, leave the light stronger. It's quite hard to tell, isn't it? It's quite nice, the darker one. I managed to get away with almost these two amounts for everything, or the permutations of these 4 colours, you know, I keep them in stock.
Yes,
That's quite nice like that.
So you've got a darker one instead, haven't you?
Yes, so we could always do the other way around, you see. Yeah. You will always want 2 colours, that's right, a window mount. And if you want to really fancy, but I would like to do a bit more and just refine it. You know, I don't mind loose, but I would like to refine it just that bit more. So let's really hit some of these colours into here, and up through here as well. Let's try and get a bit more richness going on that we haven't quite got at the moment. A bit more dry brushwork now that the painting's a bit drier as well, I can afford that. A lot darker, we can afford to make this feel a lot more as if we're underneath this shade. And we look at all the colours. Now it's gone, now it's dried a lot lighter, we can afford to come in on quite a few of these colours. And brighten them up a little bit here and there. Just needs lifting a bit, I feel. And we'll tighten up in a bit of the drawing here and there. Let's come back now to these. And we'll start looking a bit more ultramarine into there, I think, to get the blues going a bit more nicely. And that chair wants taking down a bit. Perhaps a little cobalt violet and purple down in here as well. A bit more of the purple warms going on. Some deep Prussian, a touch of warm. To really get into these darks just here. I'm not going to try and paint it to look like her, that isn't the point. The point is to get an impression of what's happening here. Play these lights against darks that we have to do with watercolour to show anything, because obviously we're working our darker and darker colours in, gradually allowing the lights to stand out, like I'm doing here now with this bottle. And I can put this onto YouTube later so that the students who were watching yesterday can see how it could have been finished, and I would have preferred to have done a bit more as I'm doing now, but time didn't permit yesterday, obviously. And we can still work on some of this and still put some darker bits in if we want. Hopefully by making these little dots, dashes and marks we'll eventually finish up with shapes dark against light, which will make the others stand out enough to start to have the illusion of real objects. It's surprising what a few little bits of colour can do just to lighten things up. I don't think it was worth working into it. I think taking it a bit further, didn't want to overwork it, but I think in this case just going that little bit further with it has actually helped. I'm missing some quite important shadows back here which I just realised need to go in. I'm going to just touch this one up with a little bit of pastel to see if I can just bring a bit of life back into it. Just here and there where I've lost some of the lights. Just a little sparkle missing here and there that I can just bring out with these pastels. And you see, as we're using rough paper, it almost looks as if it's the paper sparkling through still, so that's quite nice. Take them back if you want then, if they're too much like that. I'm going to have a go at using this particular picture here, and I'm going to stretch it that way and change it totally. I don't have the copyrights to use that picture to copy it straight off, so we're just going to base our paintings upon this. To show Hemma, who's asked me across to her home, we're going to demonstrate a few ways of painting water and waves, and that one is going to be, this one's going to be a watercolour. And we're going to concentrate on this deep blue sky. We're going to have here the different blues going across and how to paint this wave, enlarge this wave here onto the beach. So we'll be using some wet into wet techniques, wet next to wet techniques, playing one colour against another, and then finally the wet next to the dry to get sharp edges. I'm not going to bother drawing it out, I'm just going to go straight for it, just to have fun. A very basic set of watercolours which will do us today, and we'll see what we can do. So we've got a horizon line along here. We want that wave to be a little bit higher, so I'm going to have the horizon line just below halfway. It's unwise to have things always straight on halfways exactly, because they look a bit too obvious. The thirds rule is quite good, to have 2/3 or 1/3, like the golden rule, the golden mean. So I'm going to actually start with the sky and work my way downwards. We want to leave nice white fluffy clouds here. And to do that, I'm going to paint in the very deep blue first of all. I'm going to make myself some very, very deep blue into the ultramarine and paint it very, very strongly at first. Drop some darker into it in a moment. Keep it nice and loose. So we'll come in with that paint. Watercolour always goes so it's slightly lighter than when we paint it on. So I'm going to leave a little bit of a vignette at the top. I'm not going to paint right the way to the top. We'll just keep it fairly loose for the moment. Coming down into the clouds here. A little bit of very dark blue now. A little bit of, I think it's Prussian. The colours I'm using are not mine, so they didn't actually, being with cheaper watercolours, they didn't actually have the colours marked on them. I'm having to guess as to what these are for this demonstration, but quite fun nonetheless. So we've got this very deep blue coming down from the top there, and then we'll start to work that around the cloud effects that we want, coming right down into here. Taking that blue again, coming down with it, starting to leave some cloud effects already. Here. Can't find any cerulean blue in watercolour, so I'm going to have to use some acrylic for this, which is not ideal because it'll be opaque, but we'll try and manage. So I'm going to bring this cerulean blue now into the edges of this cloud. We do need these different colours, and you should always use artist watercolour quality in your paintings. Try not to get away with using the cheaper ones if you can help it. Right, and a great big fluffy cloud coming down there, around here, into there. And this is where I'm going to start using clean water to get my softer edges. So if I now come and I want a softer edge here, and just let that water do the work for me, let the clouds come on down into here, look, by letting them mix with that water, so it's hard edged in some places and softer edge in others. And we'll let that dry off a bit before I put some more hard edges back in again. And little white clouds coming down here through, right the way down to the horizon line there. And yet again at that horizon line, I want to get a fairly sharp edge in a minute, but I'm going to have to come in with my, I'm still using the acrylic at the moment, I'm going to have to come back in with my acrylic paint and put a line across there. Let the watercolour, this is controlled action, look at that beautiful effect we have there of the paint running one into another, the wet into the wet. And as this is starting to dry, I can now drop in more colour, make it a little bit stronger around some of these smaller clouds. A little bit of the darker blue here and there, just to pick out the underneath of these clouds, and the effects we've got. So the dark comes in around. We let the water do the work, the accident do the work underneath this cloud coming up here. Underneath that cloud. And there's a little bit of pink coming into there, so I'll take a tad of the, looks like cobalt violet here, and just bring that into there, underneath that. Because we've got reflected light from the warmth underneath, so a little bit of warmth into the clouds there to give this almost Caribbean blue look. We've really got to go for these strong colours. Soften that down at the edges. Carry on down here into this blue, still working at the moment. The wet into the wet. All the way down to the wave, which is going to start about here. And you notice I'm just starting to do a little bit of dry brushwork, just dragging the brush across there to start to get the feeling of the wave. Now this wave, and I want to drop some more darker blues into here in a minute, while this is still wet, I need to just flick in the idea of some ripples and shoals underneath the water here, and those will spread out. So a little darker at the edge there. and these will spread out, and the wetter the paint is, the more that they will spread. So this is timing. We have to understand watercolour and practice with it to know how wet the paint can be, how much we are allowed to play with. That must be darker down there. To play with letting this colour in before it just completely coats in. So we have to let this dry off a bit now before I want stronger colours. Carrying on down into here, I want to come to a very light colour, and we paint our light colours a light green. We paint our light colours first in watercolour always. Take a little bit of lemon yellow, the tiniest touch of white in a minute, and we'll paint the lower edge of the wave as it curls over. So here's the lower edge of the wave going in. And a little bit more on the curl of the wave there. Let that dry just a little bit. We don't want everything spreading into that yet. Now we've got another colour coming down there, which will be the turquoise again. So we'll paint that next to it, and you'll notice that the paint is softly blending one into another, because we're painting wet next to wet now, so that one colour comes slightly into another. And to get the feeling of that wave, I'm going to drag these colours through in just a moment. Now we come to a slightly stronger cerulean. And I've got to start leaving the white for the foam as it comes over as well. I'm going to show two ways of doing this. We could have used masking fluid. I'm leaving the white now directly. Equally, I could be putting in some white paint afterwards, and I'm going to show a little bit of that, or even a touch of pastel. So there are several ways of doing this. I've got the dark coming over there, and you see now I'm just starting to drag over these colours to give the feeling of the wave one into another. So that's coming over into that wave with little brush strokes, which will spread out gently to give the feeling of this wave curling over at that bottom edge there. But I want a sharp edge here, so I'm deliberately letting that dry whilst I come up into here with those stronger blues. So back up into here now, and let's drop in the stronger blue all the way along here as it curls, that wave curls over there. Still painting a fairly soft edge because I'm painting wet next to wet, so that this wave is curling in. So we carry on with this dark colour, dropping a bit more of the darker in now on top of the wave, a little bit over the top edge of it, like that. Little touches as the wave curls. We've got these lighter areas, curls over, comes a little bit darker underneath. And we're starting to get the feel of the edge of that wave now, which I'm going to make a little bit harder in just a moment again. Comes right in down there. And we'll just keep curling that wave over the top. And you can now start to see this wave beginning to appear, which is rather fun. Is this dry enough yet? No, almost. I've got to wait till that's dry to put this darker blue line along in a minute. We've got to be very careful. And watercolour is just so much to do with timing. These little bits of water just coming in, these lines coming in here as I go down. Right, that wave, believe it or not, is the basic of it is almost done now. A little bit more green into there, we'll take a little touch of the green and drop in some deeper green under here. And it's a little bit warmer on top, so you've got to really look for colour, always really look for your colours. Just take a wee touch of whatever that is there. It looks like alizarin, but it's not working. There we go, that's it. And that alizarin's going to come along the bottom edge. Just a moment, but it's also coming along the top edge of the wave slightly here. And down into here. A little bit warmer as the wave comes over, so I'm putting a little bit of purple into my deep blue here. And then I'm going to deliberately bring along under the edge of the wave, while it's still softer, that warm colour, a little bit of brown now, really looking for these colours, a little bit of brown coming along the bottom of that wave, breaking up underneath as it comes over there. And again back into the top of the wave. It's just starting to dry off a bit, So I'm now feeling the top edge of this wave. A bit more of my blue. And the paint is gradually drying, and as the paint is drying, I've got more control of the paint as it comes into the folding of this wave. Right, we've got that bit. Now I've got to leave, I've got to put the sand in next, and I've got to leave white areas for the sand as well. So, and I also want to be a little bit stronger underneath here, underneath these clouds. I'm going back to my cerulean blue again and just paint in and around the clouds a little more here. Now it's a bit drier, I can afford to be a fraction stronger under there. Some of the clouds, make them show out a bit, because we really do want this strong Caribbean feel around those clouds. There we go, that's given the really bright clouds. And I'm going to just use a little bit of dry brush. The water now is getting a bit mucky, so that's nice. I can just soften some of these cloud edges just a bit. Just drag a little bit of dry brush over the surface just to link in those clouds a fraction. There we go. Now let's look at the beach here. We've got to let that dry off now before I can do anything else, so we'll look at the beach. We've got a purpley colour going on here with white left behind, so I've got to come in darker and deliberately, unless I go in with the white paint afterwards, I've got to start leaving bits of white and foam in zigzags and a white edge going all the way along here where the water finishes, right up, and I'm going to go just into the edge here. I'm going to let it just, that's almost dry, that paint look, and I can just gently blend it a fraction. That comes all the way through to here. That's going to be a lot warmer there, leaving these little bits of white just snaking through these foam bits. Now, quite a strong, deep purpley blue. Take a little bit of red and my Prussian, and colours very weak. That's better. And we're coming quite strong under here, underneath this wave. Slightly broken effect. It's not a complete line. As the wave breaks, it's slightly broken. And whilst this is still wet again, I can come back into here. It's just wet enough to still spread in and get underneath this bit of wave here. I want these effects and just feel that wave breaking over. So you can see the wave appearing now, and that's, this darker colour is coming out into the sand. Now we need to go to warmer. I'll take some of that cobalt violet from earlier and just bring that into play here, which makes these cools seem cooler. So we don't just put one colour on stronger and stronger, we put the opposites into the painting. Got our white areas now. I start to need some more yellow ochre colour, which I seem to have here, so let's see if we can get that working. A bit more yellow going on into the water there. A bit messy, but it'll be alright. And down here, again I'm going to bring my cooler lemon yellow to play first of all, right the way along there for the sand. Let it come into the water here and into the waves, because it's going to be reflecting to the bottom of that wave. Curling over with those bits of white. And then the more orange pink. So if we can get that colour going. I'll be very thin with my paint now. There we go. So we've got our wave forming. Now, is this dry enough yet? Quite humid today. So just dry enough, I think, to have a go at that. So whilst this dries off now, I'm going to go back up to the horizon line. And I'm going to go from my oval mop to a round. Number 8, isn't it? Can't see. Yes, exactly. That's spot on, number 8. And I've got to try and paint along here a fairly straight line. And I want to be fairly strong with my cerulean again, so as I haven't got that, I'm going to have to use yet again my acrylic from before. Not ideal, but it's working. Let's see, there we go. And I need to be able to paint a fairly straight line, get a fairly straight line along here. So not far out, we'll do that once again. Try and get a line all the way along. It's okay, thanks, I've got it now. There we go. And again. Right, that's quite nice. And then I'm going to blend that acrylic colour, cerulean blue, down and into here. And I want to make the brush a little bit drier, so I'm going to just drag it across the surface like this to get the sparkling effect of the water, to let this knot paper, which I think it is, just sparkle through a bit. But it's fun, you can see the idea, can't you, Emma? Yeah, you'll have a go at this later yourself, yes. And dragging that quickly and just lively across the top of the paper here. Don't get too bogged down with trying to be too perfect with it. Use the effect, the accidental effects. Don't try and copy the photographs too much, in other words. Now we'll bring that blue across a bit more into the wave now, especially into here. As it curls over, we've got that colour shining through. We're starting to feel more the texturing of the wave as it comes over there, so I'm putting little curly marks in here. And once that's dry, I've got to put a much darker colour over that as well. But whilst I'm waiting for that to dry, I'll just prepare it, because we need some. Now it's getting a bit drier, we can start to just drop in some of these slightly stronger into the wet bits, stronger blues, a little bit more here to reflect from the sky. We're gradually building this watercolour up. There we go. Feel that wave coming across and down and over. Right. Now at this stage we have to let things dry off, because we now, from now on, really want to be painting much harder edged details in to make this look wet. So we'd let that dry off a bit. But I'm going to just put a little bit more sand in here. It's a little bit of what I hope is burnt sienna. Just slightly warm, a little bit of that burnt sienna, and a tad of, we'll just drop in some soft edges there and put a bit more detail in a moment with the harder edges, just to get the feeling of the warmth on the edge of the sand there and down to here as well. Right, that has to dry, so we'll just take a 2-minute break. Our painting is just dry enough. There's still some slightly wet areas, but now is the time to come back with my ruler. Okay. So first of all I have to paint an ultramarine across here, and then I'm going to put a bit of the Prussian into that. So I'll mix up my strong ultramarine, nice band of it to go all the way across, and we'll try and paint a fairly thin line across here. Don't want too heavy a line, all the way across again, all the way across here. I don't want a sparkle this time, so I do want a nice solid line of ultramarine right the way across. There we are. That's nice, thank you. Now I'm going to just drag that ultramarine across here at the edges to let it ripple into the sea next to it and get this effect of slightly sparkly sea. So I'm just dragging it over the surface like that, look, just to break up that edge a fraction. Now I want to go back with my stronger blue. This is my Prussian again, a much darker blue. Just along the top edge of it, and drop this in, and we'll make this top edge, that's better, darker. All the way along the top edge, and that, because we're painting wet into the wet, that will drop downwards and just blend in gradually. Went a little bit higher there, and that gives us that lovely deep blue. Now down here we're back to now, because the paint is drier, we can start to paint in more detail here, and we're working paint over dry, so wet over dry, which gives me the chance to now actually start to paint some textures in and really get a bit more detail in here, in and around the top of this wave, and make it start to look like a wave. Same there. And this picks it up in the foreground. And around these pieces of foam as it comes down, again now we can really start to play these stronger, sharper edged colours around the foam. And when that curls over there, I want it very, very dark there. I'm going to use quite heavy paint now, quite thick paint down here, to really start to feel this broken edge of the surf as that wave just breaks over there beautifully. And in and around and down, we feel the wave coming over these little curves, the top of it here. And certainly much, much darker under this bit as it comes over there. Right up deep into there. And there's our wave coming across. Now under here, below that foam, we've got a few bits of dark to put in here as well, because it's quite textural all the way along here. Little squiggles and circles and dots and dashes. But down here is a much sharper edge again, so I've got to come in and we'll feel more of that. But it's much warmer. And amongst these little bits of sand that we had earlier, I need to start making it a little more detailed. And we get little bits of dots and dashes and where that edge of that water comes in. The same here. We've got slightly sharper edges on the edge of that wave, and this starts to make it look more glassy because we've got rough against smooth, light against dark, rough against smooth, warm against cool. And this lovely soft wave just gently breaking over in this Caribbean light. Now down here, I want to do a little bit of glazing and just start to leave and feel the wet sand there. So this is a glaze or a wash over a colour. And that painting is as near as damn it for me. I'm not going to do a lot more on this because it's working quite well. Oops, Emma's just going to do a tipsy and I'm going to film it and get £200 from You've Been Framed. Now, break that down into there because it's a more broken effect of surf. There we go. Now what I'm going to do now is just take a little bit of pastel, and for the fun of it, I'm just going back and I'm just going to use a little bit of pastel here just to break in one or two bits of white just to show you what can be done, and using that pastel to twist the marks down there. We can go along this edge of this water here. Could use white gouache, equally the same, but just to bring some of the whites back that I lost earlier, to show you that you don't have to be perfect with your preliminary work, and how these waves, the whites, can now be brought back a little bit here as that comes down and over there. We'll just glisten across the top of the water a fraction there. Don't need to do much of this, it's just really to show you the technique of what can be done and how that wave can come down and through into there. And the whites here too, coming forward. And there we are. I think that'll do for that little demonstration. Works fairly well. But I will just put a signature on that. Just a little bit of tidying up here and there now. I think we can afford to go behind the wave just slightly more in places like that to bring out a few of the ripples behind there. Don't want to make too much because it'll spoil the... I shall soften those back in a moment just a little bit. But we already had our soft effects when we painted wet into wet earlier. So what I'm doing now is putting some slightly harder edges back in to work against the foil of the smoother wave as it breaks over. We'll just drag that across the top a bit as well. And there we are. I think that's quite a nice little piece, and it'll do for the demonstration of what I wanted to do. So Caribbean beach and a nice gentle wave lapping in here. A little bit more work, but not a lot to do down here, just to bring that wave out. There we go. A little bit more of the blues, but not too much. Greens underneath the wave as it breaks. There we are. Now we'll go back to our other painting. Next I'm going to do a 3-hour workshop in 10-minute sessions. Lovely model, and we're going to use stick and ink and brush and ink. That's Indian ink, so it's waterproof. And try and use a very flowing method. I'm going to discuss with them the various ways of working with line and texture. As you see here, the top right with the brush and stick for a landscape, then shaded drawings and all sorts of other ways of working. And also how to use pen and wash. And in this case, in the lower half of these drawings, you see the sort of work we're going to be doing using that stick and ink and brush and ink. And this is our gorgeous model, of course. So. And my freshly cut flowers this morning.
Oh yes, beautiful.
They'll work for them. Now, on the top left of that sheet, on the line sheet, is this person I was talking about earlier called Giacometti. And he works by, he's a sculptor, tends to be fresher and work better than doing.
Paint won't wash the ink.
Indian ink is waterproof. which is why I said don't get it on the carpet, because it won't get it out. And the Profi pens and so on are waterproof pens as well, so you deliberately buy waterproof pens. There are so many examples in here where somebody's used, in the form of etching, lots and lots of lines to shade. And there's just so many ways that we can work. Like that. Now reach up to your hat a moment. That's good, and keep that. Now, so that's what I want you to do. That turn was lovely. Now, take your left foot to your left a bit as if you're going to take a step to the left. That's right, that's good. Good. Now you see the sort of pose we want. So we can change the pose, and if you've got ideas, please say them. Don't just leave it to me if you wanted to kneel. Or so 10 minutes at a time, because you're not going to be able to stay there that long. Now, the difference between brush and... Now, with a brush, not only do you have line, but also you have pattern. So, for instance, if we were doing a flower and we do that, we get a flower coming, don't we? In the same way as the Japanese, if they wanted to do bamboo, then we get this sort of, the brush can be used for patterns and textures anyway, straight away. The beauty of this is that we have a lovely flowing line with the brush. So if I straight away say, right, I've got to fit her in here. Don't worry, I mean, if you actually find you can't, if you just do the top half, that's fine. If you actually not want to do her legs right now, I mean, I might just go straight for that lovely flowing bit of hat, straight on. Try and get it as simple as I can. Comes around the face there, round here. Got that hair coming down. I can use the side of the brush a bit there. Try and get that line. It does tend to settle. You've got to stir it up occasionally or you find grey.
Have you mixed water with that ink?
No, although I just washed my brush out. But it should be a bit darker than this, so this needs stirring a bit. Now, as fewer marks as possible. Eye. A little bit showing there. Mouth. Underneath the lip, keep it flowing. Around the hat, hair coming down there, her ear just coming in. That bit of hat comes down there and around. We're not going to be that accurate. Never got to worry. All we want to do is, so I've got to get going. The more I do, the more I should become flowing as well. If you wanted tone, now this is where you could say, right, I want to have that light against the dark there. I could either come straight in there with the brush and go totally around that bit of face and just shade that down. And then use water if I want to shade down into here, or I can just carry on. On the top of her hat, it must follow from her head, so easy as that. And then just indicate those, keep it simple. Down, back, let the neck flow down, under her chin. And I'm going to simplify, as I go along, I shall get more and more, I shall simplify this more and more and more. That's the... And then that shoulder coming down here. And you can see that the lovely, lovely use of line. We've got the earrings coming down there. That comes over, then her arm. Now let's see the difference we get now with a piece of stick. And it's surprising, this is it's not as good as your bits of stick. This is my old bit. So it's not very pointy, but we should, once I get that stick going. That's right, the hand, now keep it simple. Arm comes around there. That thumb, just indicating things. Want as fewer marks as possible. Those flowers are coming up around here. So now brush is very nice because the brush has all that different flowing, but equally simplifying the flowers in. The dress comes down, out. As fewer marks as possible. We've got that basket coming around here. We want basket type marks now, so I can start to just indicate basket. Big leaf coming up there. Now she's done 3 minutes, so we can't spend too long. It's time to flake out. Hand up to the hat again. Keep it as simple as possible. Basic line there. The angle of the arm. Can't keep these marks slightly stylised as simple as possible, and as you go along you'll get better, I hope. And we'll do masses and masses of these, and I want you just to put them all around the back of the room, just do them, take them off, lay them all around the back, one on top of another. We'll have a big display at the end to see how we've got on. So, and if I want to smudge, I can come in there and I can start to, and you can use the side of this, as I was using the side of this here, start to get dark, so just where I feel that they're needed. So use of the brush or the stick, it's up to you. If you want to indicate even patterns on the dress, you can just indicate them just to give a surface like this maybe. You get the idea?
Yeah.
It's going to be good fun. And, you know, that's not great. I've got to get into it myself. I've got to get flowing again as you have. So you can do part of the figure, you can do the whole figure, you can do just the feet, you can do studies. I could now go down, have a bit of fun, and I could work around maybe the leg. I'll just have a quick look at a bit of leg. How that shape comes down, you can keep it simple. And then shoe comes round, here, across. Just do quick studies like that, even the flower shape on it, and then the way that dress flows around the other leg. So you see we've almost got somebody standing behind her now. It's good fun. So play with your brushes, see what marks you can get by going thick to thin. If we press hard on the brush, we're going to get a thick line. As we come off with the pressure, it gets thinner. In the same way around, we can go thick, too thin, too thin, too thick. And as I look, for instance, at where the dress is there, I could come around quite lightly there, then go thicker where the shadow is on the leg, then go thinner again. And then I could come down, if I wanted, in a total block for her leg there, down to the shadow. You see how differently we can use the brush. And then cut around that shadow and come down into her foot. Again, around here, I could leave the flower pattern showing and go black around that. There's so many ways you can work using the brush or the stick or both. So lots of fun, lots of paper, stylize, every 10 minutes she's going to move, and don't stay where you are either. Change places with each other at times. If you do one in 5 minutes and you want to change to somebody else and you see somebody else changing, yeah, move around. Or move your chair even if you want to come in closer, don't block somebody else, but just have fun and enjoy drawing. So now as I go along, already, because I'm going to do it more and more and you get to know the subject you're doing. Right, take a break please. That's it, that's what we'll be doing, like that, I think. Yep. So I'll come round and see each of you and just give you a few tips or hints if I think you need them. But the first thing is, as I say, these first ones are going to be, you're going to be too illustrative, you're going to be too detailed, and as you go along, you loosen up, you less marks, you try and make it flow, and do make those marks about the edges. That's the most important thing. As much paper as you require. That's right, drop the pictures down behind you or beside you and just keep going. So most of you have done at least 5 or 6 now, haven't you? Which is pretty good going.
I don't seem to have a 6.
Well done. Back to have a photograph, a group shot, yeah. Here we are going to paint a portrait for a very attractive lady in America, for her husband in fact, and he sent me a series of photographs as you've just seen, the most attractive of which we've decided is this one, and we're going to take a composite again. We've looked at the things that she likes most for the background, whether it be the blue mountains where they first met, or whether it be yellow for the yellow flowers, the yellow poppies or poppies. And then in the end we decided that this peach blossom would be the nicest to use. So I've drawn out the basic composition onto a canvas and we're about to make a start. I should do the background last, so I'm going to start by working on to just getting a layer of colour onto the hair at first and letting that dry to gradually work into, because I want quite a lot of fine detail on this, and then I'll start building up the colours for the flesh tones. So I'm going to start by putting a slight wash of yellow ochre. I should be using quite a bit of yellow ochre on this, and I should bring up these creams later with lemon yellow and cooler yellow, so I want a fairly warm yellow at first. A little bit of burnt umber into that just to dull it down a bit. That's better. There we are. This is just to give myself a basic, get rid of this white, this tone. You can see my drawing through it. I'm just going to wash this over here just to get rid of this bright white canvas at first. So it's fairly rough painting at first, as you can see. Just to cover this up. Nice and quick, nice and loose. I'll get more and more detail as we go on. And I should go down to a slightly smaller brush and we'll start to work up the flesh tones. And that'll give this time to dry off. Using a lot of terps in the paint as well will allow that, facilitate that. I want a fair amount of body colour in this, so in other words I'm going to put quite a bit of white into these colours at first to get it going. I'm going to start with burnt umber and white and a little touch of the yellow ochre. Some of these shaded areas here, just tickling it up into there. The slightly shadowed areas at first. Then come back to the yellow ochre and white, a lot lighter. You can see how the white makes it a lot more pale and slightly pasty. But I just want to lose at the moment this white canvas. I can start to see my colours properly. Start to work on some of the shading already. We'll let the pencil marks just show through at the moment. That's the advantage, I can still see where my pencil marks are to continue work. I want to go a little bit warmer, so I'm going to take some burnt sienna. We're not going to the bright reds or anything yet, we're going to keep to quite subtle colours. And white. And then we'll start to get a bit of modelling. Right, we've got to work into the eyes a little, and that's slightly creamier, so I'm going to use a little bit of white and a touch of chrome and the smallest touch of blue as well, just to tint it down a bit. Get the basic colours worked out first. Get these colours established. And more detail as we go on. And while I'm at that, I'm going to look at the blue-grey of the eyes. I'm going to take some cobalt, again a bit of white because I need some body colour. Put a tiniest touch of burnt sienna into that to make it into a grey. And then we'll bring that into those eyes there. So we've got this lovely soft blue-grey. It's quite a strong blue-grey. It's going to want to be warmed up a bit in a minute, but we'll just get back in there with our flesh tones first and correct that eye. And we've got to start feeling our warms and cools in a minute as well. Just tidy up the drawing around the eyes first. Try and get most important points sorted. And while I'm at that, I'll just look at the pupils. And to make a dark, we're not going to use black. Again, we'll be making greys. So I'm going to take the, not quite my deepest blue. My deepest blue is precious. I'm taking my my ultramarine blue, and a little touch of burnt umber, adding that to it. Very starey at the moment, but we'll soften all of this down with these eyes. Get these working a lot better soon. So at the moment I'm working on the eyes. I'm going to take a bit more burnt sienna now. Add a touch of that blue to it just to bring it down a bit. And we'll just find the warmth of those eyelids a bit more there. So we're using mainly earth colours at the moment, the way that the warmth comes round into the eyes, which is going to help to bring out the blueness of the blue. Now I want a little bit of that cream that we were using earlier to really get the effects of the iris. A little bit of ultramarine and cobalt into the blue there to really start to get a bit of a flash of. And then back again, still to the cream. I really want to get the glassiness and the depth of the eye. Now back to the darks again. This is our burnt umber and ultramarine again. Back to the blue. A bit stronger, that blue coming in there. About got the eye now. Got the eyes. I'm trying not to use very strong colours yet. I'm just keeping to my earth colours at the moment as I build this up. Establish basics of the portrait. Right, I need to start looking at some slightly greener tints, just adding a little bit of green into this now for the shadows. Gently blending. I want to be very gentle and subtle with these colours in this case. Particular painting. And with little slightly cooler tints as well, because we've got that green there, but we've also got a little bit of blue starting to come in now to the shadows up into here. Look for these colours. And build up these ever so carefully. Nice subtle shades of lights. Well, so far we've only worked with just a few colours. We've used white, burnt sienna and yellow ochre, and a little touch of burnt umber, with a tiny touch of cobalt blue and ultramarine blue here and there. We're going to work up more colour as we go. Oh yes, there was a little touch of the greens into the shadows as well. Now, as we go along, we're going to obviously work up much more of the darks. Next, I want to take a larger brush again and work in some of these darker areas of the hair. So I'll take some more ultramarine blue, and some more of my burnt umber, and go straight in there with both the warms and the darks. That's fairly warm just there with the amount of burnt umber I've used. I'm also going to be coming in fairly strongly with the ultramarine blue into there as well in a moment. Take a bit more of the blue now. A little touch of cobalt, because these cool blues are going to help to bring the warms out. See, at the moment all I'm doing is just covering up the canvas to get rid of, so I can see what I'm doing. We don't need black. As an impressionist I hardly ever use black, and if I do I use it as a colour rather than, I tend to make it look like a blue rather than a black. I'll need to use a finer brush on this later on, but at the moment again let's just get rid of the white and establish things. Always try to keep the whole picture going as much as possible, in other words not going to finish one area too much. Not easy to painting like this when we have so much to do. Working out some of the composition. So if I get rid of this white completely, what I'm going to do now is take some white and a little touch of rose, just establish in some of these pinks. In fact, most of it actually is much cooler. Take a little bit of violet, a little bit of purple, and get that in there. Get back in with the creams later. Let's just totally get rid of these whites. I'm not being at all accurate at the moment. All I'm doing is just covering canvas really, just putting in tones and colours approximately where they're going to be, and I'll work them up later. Having got that colour on there, we start to see how much more this cool colour is going to be coming into the hair as well. So one colour always affects another. And how that colour now starts to actually come onto the face. A little bit of reflected light, just glazed across, giving her some life, cool tones reflecting into the face, even coming into the eyes a little. The rose, so we're going into a true red now. The burnt sienna wasn't really, it was just giving us a nice overall warmth. Now we want to start adding a bit of real red, which will make the other seem softer. I'm going to start to add a little glisten to the eye, a bit of that same pink, this time with a little touch of cream in it, just to put a little light highlight around the edge of the eye here. So behind that then there should be a little bit of dark as well. Don't overdo the creases or lines on the face. Smile lines are lovely and delightful. We want to indicate, not bring them out too much. And by using the opposites, the colour circle, we can start to make things like the blues stand out more. Okay, back to the hair now. This is going to take quite a bit of work. I'll start with a medium brush. Little flat, Let's start to work up these darks first. I'll take some burnt sienna and ultramarine. Let's just look at the warmer darks in that. And by a series of brush strokes, letting darks shine over light, shine through lights and lights over darks will start to build up the feeling of the hair here. So the general idea is to try and get these textures built up of the hair without actually painting too much of the hair. Give the illusion of it rather than every single little brush stroke. And I'm still using my burnt sienna and ultramarine. You can see how as I build up these lights and darks we start to get the feeling of a three-dimensional effect. I'm going to want to get a finer brush and we'll start looking at the blondness, the cool yellows shortly. We've been using warm yellows up until now, yellow ochre and burnt sienna. We're going to be moving into lemon yellows shortly. And when I put that next to the flesh, we'll see how much cooler that is. You see there? And it'll make the tints of the skin seem so much nicer. Stroke after stroke, building it up. And suddenly the portrait starts to come to life. As indeed this colour will as it comes forward on the face, being lighter. You play between the warm and the cools. In every colour, remember, there is a warm and a cool. No matter what it is, whether it's a red or a green or a brown, there's always a cooler version of it and a warmer version of it. And although I'm putting all this cream on, I'm going to put a little bit of light blue across this in a minute because the light of that isn't. It looks like a cream, but it isn't. It's definitely a cool, and because it's a cool, it's going to help the other warm seem warmer again. Now back to my very light. We're going to play in between now, going back from light to dark to light, because we now want these little bits of golden hair just shining down across the front here, just coming down. Done most of the lighter areas of the hair now. I'm just starting to work up a few more of these light tones. As well as that, we'll go back in with the darks. That's better. It isn't often, it isn't the thing you think is wrong that actually is. That's what we've got to try and get here, is just what it is that actually isn't working. Right, I think it's time to be looking at a bit around the flowers now. Take a small brush again. More flat this time, and let's look at some of these very light creams and pinks on here. There are some very, very light colours, almost blues. And then we have a painting that isn't just a copy of a portrait, it's something a bit more. We've got the play of light and colour and atmosphere. Got a mood that we're trying to create about the feeling of the person. A bit of cadmium orange and white here.